Clerk Royal, you good?
I am ready.
Okay. I'd like to call this Saline City Council work meeting to order at 5:33 p.m. Members present are council members Dillon, Gearbaugh, Halsh, Harmount, and Morrow. Delorco will be here momentarily. And as was noted previously, Mayor Pro Tem Rice will be absent from both the work meeting and regular meeting. From city staff, we have City Manager Swallow, Clerk Royal, Treasurer Finch, and also from staff, our Parks and Rec Director, our Department of Public Service Director, City Engineer, and Police Chief. At this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
As submitted.
Moved by Dillon to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Halsh. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to excuse the absence of our colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Rice?
So moved.
Moved by Harmount to excuse the absence. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Halsh. All those in favor of excusing the absence say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We come now to public comments. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required to state their name and address for the record. The record will reflect there are no individuals present in council chambers for this work meeting, or at least not presently. I would defer to the city clerk. Were there any written comments provided in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Then we will transition to the one and only discussion item, which is recommended fiscal year 2027 budget presentation and review. I will turn it over to staff. City Manager Swallow, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I will start out with kind of a little bit of a review of how we, want to structure this evening's meeting, and then I'll be combined with Treasurer Finch on the overall presentation. We also do have some key staff, department heads here this evening, based on some of the questions that had come up in our first couple of work sessions on the budget, the capital improvement, and then the general overall budget. Wanted to have a few folks to answer questions here if those may come up as well. So with that, slide if you would, Ben. What we hope to accomplish this evening is hopefully address some of the questions that came up at our prior work sessions, provide some locations of where potentially that appears in the budget, or answer questions that council may have yet this evening. We want to go through sections of the strategic plan to talk about how we feel that we've addressed some of those strategic plan priorities and goals, and kind of show you where in the budget we believe that is addressed. And then obviously we'll wrap up this evening with questions from council and any areas that you need further or additional information before we come to the kind of the adoption process, which will occur in May. We're hoping by the second meeting in May that we're adopting a budget. So we've got about a month basically before that occurs. So with that, slide, Ben. So hopefully you all recognize these strategic priorities from the strategic plan. They're pretty much taken directly from those. And we did use these as part of the guidance as we looked at the budget. Obviously, there's still what I'll call kind of incremental budgeting involved in this budget, where we moved based on last year, did incremental increases in what we knew about, but also wanted to highlight a few of the things that did come from the strategic plan. So with that, slide, Ben. Starting with effective asset management. Clearly, we want to continue to make and build on the progress that we've made thus far in kind of shifting from more of a, what we'll call a little more reactive into more clear asset management focused development, and how we decide which projects move forward into the capital improvement plan, which projects we address first versus those that are deferred. So with that, we've had a lot of discussion ongoing about continuing to develop the GIS system into the tool that we believe it can be, and not only for long-term planning, but also prioritizing projects as they come forward. We've had a lot of discussion about that in our asset management working group as well, about how we leverage that investment, and we do believe that as we've made significant progress. You've hopefully seen the dashboard now, or maybe had an opportunity to go take a look at that is public facing, that will ultimately become how we communicate with the public on a lot of those projects as well. But I think that can be very informative. You saw some of those preliminary maps. Not only is there a geographic component to it, but then to click into that and be able to see more detail about the project. Project budget in particular is what we're talking about here, but that has come a long ways under under current status, and we hope to continue that. So you'll see additional funding for GIS in not only general fund, but also in the water and sewer funds. So that is an ongoing project. Also, one of the key staff additions that's proposed as part of this budget is the additions of a facilities manager within the Department of Public Services. So that is a key element. What we've seen over time is not having a specific person that is responsible for projects and specifically our buildings in particular, but also some of our other facilities, but the buildings and parks are key elements of those. That having someone to kind of, if you will, shepherd those projects through the process and also work with the department heads on specific needs in their area would be highly beneficial. So we are proposing the addition of a facilities manager. That wage is actually allocated out amongst 3 different funds again, a general fund, water, and sewer. But they would be really a citywide staffing resource. So with that slide, Ben. Yep, your head's ahead of me. All right. One of the other key goals coming out of the strategic plan is how can we better communicate with the public, be as transparent as possible, looking at some ways we can be a little easier to find information, to find out what's coming up in terms of meetings, looking at how our agendas are posted and how that information is posted. Right now, you kind of have to go documents demand, maybe find your group, maybe dig a little deeper, and some of the subcommittees are not always there. And committees that we administer here at the city, commissions. So with what we'd like to do is transition to the Diligent software, and also not only move city council, but also all of our regular boards and commissions to publish their agendas, minutes, and on that, as well as all the attachments. It is my opinion, and Clerk has done a lot of research on this as well, a lot easier to find information. You can see the entire agenda packet, move through the agenda packet. Also, it does track also who the members of our various boards and commissions and what their terms are. And so that's been the comment is, how do we know when terms are coming up and when appointments may be needed? How do residents find out more information about particular groups? So we do believe that would be helpful in this transition and moving to this new software platform. In terms of fiscal stewardship, we've talked a little bit already about some of the changes that we've made in the budget format. So I'm going to maybe let Treasurer Finch talk a little more detail about that.
Sure, absolutely. Like City Manager Swallow said, we've made some changes to the format. We've pulled that fund balance out of the presentation piece so we can truly see our revenues and expenditures and how much we're actually leaning on that fund balance, whether it's operationally or for capital improvement. So that's an important step towards transparent financial reporting, so it's easier to read and more apparent. We are working internally on some internal control updates as far as features that we have in our BSNA cloud software to make sure that we are top-notch as far as our fiscal stewardship internally. We are making decisions and projections in this budget to restore our fund balance after significant use of it in the current fiscal year. So that's proposed in this budget, not only to meet our minimum of 15%, but to rise above that and get closer to that 20% reserve. And then a priority in fiscal year 27, while this is not necessarily a budget piece, we are looking to get 3-year projections built out for the fiscal year 28 budget presentation. So that's one of the key goals for fiscal stewardship in the strategic plan. And then finally, the one piece I wanted to comment on was an updated water and sewer rate study, which is obviously going to be very important for the projections and financial planning long term.
Can I stop you there, Treasurer Finch? Mr. Goodman, we're getting a little bit of an echo from staff's microphones, particularly City Manager and City Treasurer. Just wanted to make note of that. Please continue.
Yeah, a couple other, I guess I'll call them minor, but it is, I think, again, a little more transparency, a little bit more easy to find information. Again, transferring the vehicle equipment replacement fund out of the general fund into its own fund. Also for longer term planning, understanding what we have for kind of budget and fund balance available for new equipment purchases. So that was another fairly significant change this year. So, and we're moving on. All right. So, organizational effectiveness. We already talked about how we're going to address some of the challenges we've had with some of our facilities maintenance with the addition of the facilities manager. Again, having kind of a coordinating person in that role, I think will be helpful in that regard. With the significant change in the wastewater treatment plant and some of the additional processes that are occurring there, we are proposing an additional employee to manage those. One of the things that, as you recall, in the earlier budget discussions, we did have a potential request for 2 new employees at the wastewater plant. Looking at that, we felt that, well, from a staffing and transition and training standpoint, maybe we'd be bringing better to bring one at this point, and to let our current staff fully understand, what is involved in the new plant, what additional resources do we need. Maybe there's a specific skill set we need to go after more so in the kind of what I'll call the second employee for that. So with that, also just to kind of make sure that we have the full rate study completed as well, so we understand what our financial obligations are, and that we are covering appropriately with the rates to cover our expenses. So with that, the other thing that was brought up previously was making sure we have adequate training budget available for council and staff members. That has been increased, particularly at the council level. However, we also took into account, we didn't really large increases, a little over $1,000 increases from the last discussion, and we can continue to evaluate that. But obviously, as council needs or is requesting more training, we can adjust that. Right now, we felt that increase was appropriate, but to make sure there is adequate budget, not only there, but also for staffing level as well. All right, next. Supporting a viable community. One of the key other requests in this budget from a staffing perspective is the creation of the Economic Development Director. That was a key goal in the plan to create an Economic Development Department for the city of Saline. We've previously had kind of a lead or an ombudsman that dealt with business owners in the community. This would be a dedicated staff person for that role, also working more closely with Saline Main Street program, working more closely with Ann Arbor Park, working more closely with our state agencies. I know it was brought up last time from a workforce standpoint. Also, how are we maybe providing more information to the community on where they can seek additional resources or where they can find employment. So that would be another key component of the Economic Development Director position. Ongoing support for Main Street. We kept that level. Also, I guess you could look at certainly the Davenport Curtis House as a viable community component. And so there's additional budget for that going forward, not only for the debt service, but also for facility maintenance and some planning work in the next fiscal year. So we are also looking at public transportation. One of the things that we're going to want to talk about later is, how do you want to see the proposal maybe come back from People's Express? What level of service do you want to see from them? So that's something that is something we want to hear back from council. We did include what I'll call their lower level budget in that component in the budget for this coming fiscal year. But again, we may have some more ongoing negotiation with People's Express for that. Parks and Rec Services, continuing not only the Recreation Center, but also investment in our parks. And we talked a little bit about the separate Parks and Trees budget or department and how that is allocated. So you'll see that continuing on with some small increases there as well. Looking at the general fund support for the Recreation Center, that's obviously something that will be coming back to you from the implementation team with some more specific recommendations in June. But you will see what I'll call a continued level of service in the current budget for the Recreation Center, and then some capital needs at the Recreation Center. Luckily, we have received that federal earmark, so we'll be planning on those investments and making sure we understand where those funds are going exactly. But those were identified in the budget, at least the first, what I'll call first half of that funding level, that $2.7 million has been identified in this budget to fall under that grant or under that earmark. So next slide. Personal planning and smart growth. One of the comments we did hear earlier in the budget process was to include some master plan work, not only citywide, but maybe park specific, because we have the 5-year master plan for the parks coming up. So we did include a budget for both of those items in the proposed fiscal year 27 budget. Also, we believe that certainly economic development director role would play a key part in this, working with community development department on continued changes, getting more feedback from our builders, from our developers, from our business community on what updates we may need to make in our policies and ordinances. So covering that as well. So moving on to the next slide, employing a skilled workforce. There are market adjustments in wages based on what we anticipate coming through. Obviously, a lot of the evaluations have not been done at this point, so we'll have some more fine-tuned numbers for that coming soon, but we do believe, based on past experience, as well as taking a look at where we're at market-wise, that we've plugged in at least appropriate increases on the wage level. As was mentioned previously, we do have funds budgeted for training, conference, and education, and specifically for City Council as well. As noted, while we were proposed earlier to add 2 employees at PCF, we on the pollution control facilities, for those that may not be familiar with that acronym, we are looking at phasing those in, 1 new employee, and then reevaluating that for fiscal year 28. And for the reasons to make sure that we have that budget covered in our current rates in particular. And then prioritizing community health, wellness, and safety. As we have for the past several years, we have budgeted for a fully staffed police department. While we did have 1 recent departure, we are anticipating quickly moving into recruitment process and getting that position filled. And it does, again, support some ongoing education for our public safety professionals. So with that, next slide. All right. So, focus topic. One of the things that I think was brought up last time was, is there a true need for the economic development director position? And I'm advocating that yes, I do believe there is. Some of the things that came out of the strategic plan that we wanted to focus on, revenue diversification. In fact, just give you a recent example, working with Ann Arbor Spark recently to talk about our industrial properties and what we can do to make sure that those are resilient going forward, since we have not seen a lot of investment in that area. We have a lot of existing sites that we do not want to see a decline, and want to make sure that how can we make sure that they're new tenants or new owners for those properties. How could they be reused if for any reason they do go dark for a period of time, and looking at kind of that whole looking forward more and working more proactively with our partners in that regard. Supporting downtown, we know this is a critical element for our community. The identity for many communities is really that downtown area. We've seen some up and down in terms of vacancies in our downtown storefronts, so we want to make sure we're identifying that ahead of time, working with property owners to make sure we keep our downtown storefronts full, as well as potential growth in the downtown. We have a couple of near downtown projects now that are viable, and how do we make sure that we can pair that with a developer or overcome hurdles that they may be encountering from the city's perspective? How can we make sure that process is as smooth as possible for redevelopment opportunities? Was identified grant writing as a key element, so that's something that as we develop the job description, that will be a key requirement that they are proficient in grant writing. Right now, it's kind of department by department, whatever the material might be, and we'll still need those department level experts to input on that, but who has more experience, or finding someone who has more experience with the overall grant writing process and tracking those grants is something that will be a key element of this position. Spoke already about business attraction and retention, development coordination with all our partner agencies, and then really building more of those strategic long-term partnerships. It takes sometimes, projects may take years to develop, and having someone that can kind of continue that and keep a continuous person here at the city that they can contact and work with is, I believe, very important. So those are some of the reasons I obviously have proposed and would support ongoing use or implementation of an economic development director position here at the city. So with that, next slide, Ben. You've seen this slide before, but it has changed slightly. Obviously, instead of the 2 wastewater treatment personnel, we're only proposing 1 at this point in time. And really, if you look at that administration line, that is a little bit deceptive in terms of it shows 2 position increases from FY26 to 27, but that really is backfilling of an existing position. And also I'd like to point out that, obviously we did have an assistant city manager position for some time. We're not proposing to replace that specific position. So the 2 you see there are the economic development director as well as a backfill position in the treasurer's department. DPW, we have the proposed facilities manager as the additional personnel there, 1 additional personnel at the wastewater treatment plant, and the others are remaining constant. So, next slide, Ben. One of the comments I heard was, what are some of the general trends over time that are happening? So this is really the entire general fund and includes both obviously cumulative revenues and cumulative expenditures. But I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, Treasurer Finch, on what we've seen with this overall, but really just to show you kind of a trend line of what's happening in the general fund.
I would just comment that the variation can be fairly significant in the general fund, and that's mostly attributable to the fact that we carry a lot of capital improvement within that fund. So later, City Manager Swallow will speak to the potential of a new fund that is actual capital project fund for those things that don't fall in, road specific or water and sewer specific, just so that we can truly start to see the trend operationally and we can look at the capital impacts separately.
I think one thing this slide does also show is we are being fiscally responsible and overall. I mean, we see, while there are occasions where expenditures may exceed revenues, the majority of the years, we are seeing revenues, exceed expenditures, and we have been able to maintain an appropriate fund balance. With that, next slide, Ben. And one of the other things that we heard was we'd like to see some trends in terms of salaries. And while this slide is fairly busy because we have coming from various different sources, it does give you an overall trend line.
Yeah, there's a lot to look at here. So this is all of our full-time salaries from 2020 through the 2027 projected or proposed, obviously separated by fund. So I do want to comment that the general is one of the highest because there is a portion of DPW that's also carried there as well. Something else I wanted to point out is the more significant increase that you're seeing in 2025 through 2027 has a few things factored in. One, that market adjustment that we've talked about for the TPOAM contract that contributes to that. The second would be the addition of the small number of positions that we've been talking about tonight, the facilities manager, the economic development director, those impact that. And then finally, in the past 2 years, we've had a significant amount of turnover here, which has resulted in some payouts. So that does kind of skew that number. So that's the reason there at the end we start to see it really climb there. The 7-year average change is 5%, so relatively in line with what I would consider to be a standard.
Next slide, Ben.
Yep. For fund balance, this should be familiar. This is the same chart that was presented in the last meeting. We just added the percentage change year over year and what's happening with unassigned fund balance. Most notably, I want to point out the current year, fiscal year 2026. You see that's a 49% reduction. That's because of the Davenport Curtis purchase and the new communication unit that we purchased for the rec center. You'll notice in 27, we're proposing that will recover, and that's because of those bond proceeds that we plan to issue in the upcoming fiscal year that we had talked about previously. So again, I think it's just important to comment that operationally, things are stable. The change in fund balance is strictly due to one-time capital investments. So there's not a true structural issue. This is related to capital outlay. I think my last comment I wanted to make on fund balance is we'll be coming back to you guys in May with a specific motion for a very specific amount to unassign from legislative changes fund balance. So thank you to Councilmember Gearbaugh for getting that ball rolling. We'll be coming back for follow-up just to make it a very clear dollar amount that you'll be unassigning to restore fund balance to 15%.
So one of the other things we did talk about going forward, and this is really more of a, I guess more of a FY28 discussion, is if we do create that capital fund, is that, maybe actually taking a closer look at that assigned fund balance and assigning it more specifically to capital projects. Right now, like kind of legislative changes kind of doesn't really have a lot of definition to it. We knew kind of that there were some changes at the state level that could cause us some budgetary problems, but I think that immediate concern has passed, and so now we need to take a little more close look at how we have assigned that other half, if you will, of our fund balance, and taking a closer look at should we assign that to specific projects. Next, we want to talk a little bit about property taxes, because I think there's some good news here for our residents, so I want to touch on that, and I'll turn that back over to Treasurer Finch as well.
Absolutely. So citywide, our total ad valorem taxable value is increasing from about $631 million to $677 million. That growth is driven by a few factors. One is going to be that inflationary adjustment of 2.7%. You'll have recognized that number from your assessment notices. There is new construction that is adding to our tax base, so there's true growth in our taxable value. And then also, we have the LDFA capture. While it's no longer being captured by the LDFA, our general fund portion is now remaining in the general fund. The top table on the slide before you shows our current millage rates in the fiscal year 2026, as well as the proposed millage rates for the 2027 budget. And the bottom table kind of shows the resulting tax revenue. For our operating millage, we are reducing slightly from 13.6508 to 13.4514. That is our maximum allowable millage. So we are
rolled back by Headley.
Yes, we are rolled back by Headley, and we are asking to levy our full millage at this point. For rubbish, we are looking to reduce that by $0.25 mil. So we would be going from 2.1 down to 1.85. City Manager Swallow and I have taken a really close look at that fund. It has a healthy fund balance, and we believe this millage of 1.85 will bring in sufficient revenue to cover our waste management contract and the other small expenses that were recorded there in that fund. Otherwise, the two mills that we as a city have are the street improvement millage of $1 mil, and there's no change there. And then the fire special assessment of $1 mil, which will be coming to you guys for final approval, I believe in May, but there's no change there as well. For the general fund, we are estimating about $8.7 million in property tax revenue. In your actual budget packet, you'll see this on page 2. Right at the top, it was requested that I let you know about the tax revenue accounts. So in your general ledger numbers, anything that ends in a 402-000, those are real property taxes, and anything that ends in a 410-000 are your personal property tax revenues. So those are in a few different places, like the general fund, the local roads fund for that street millage, Fund 226 for rubbish, and then you would see that also in Fund 205 for that fire special assessment. So I just wanted to point out where you can actually locate those. Finally, just a little disclosure here at the end. These are solid estimates, but they remain preliminary until our Headley reduction is confirmed by equalization. I've calculated it myself, but we'll let them give me the official report, and then I'll give an update to you guys that whether there's a slight adjustment or not. But
All right, next slide.
Just a quick question on that other one. Why is there a difference between even though it's the same millage for the fire and for the rubbish?
Oh, you mean for fire and streets?
Fire and
They're
streets,
both
I
one.
apologize,
Yep. That's because our fire is for real property only,
Thank
and
you.
our streets millage is real and personal.
All right, next slide. So we do still have some, kind of outstanding or larger cost drivers that we've talked about quite a bit as we lead up to this particular presentation. So inflationary pressures are real, and obviously due to some of the world events, we've seen continued pressures on materials and supplies in particular, obviously fuel prices, and so we are continuing to build in what I'll call some fairly healthy inflationary increases in those areas of the budget. In terms of utilities, obviously we see ongoing increases from both a gas and electric standpoint as well. So if you have personally looked at your bills, those have been, obviously we see the same thing too here at City. One of the things we try to do to curb some of those utility costs is enter into multi-year contracts with, for example, Constellation Gas, to try and lock in some of those rates so we don't see year-over-year increases necessarily, and it helps us budget a little bit more carefully from that. So we are looking at different ways we can control those utility costs. Contracted services, unfortunately, we continue to see as we receive bids back, continued increases there. Obviously, we talked about some of the capital projects actually this evening, later on in the regular city budget, but we don't see prices going down for certainly, even though you'd think after a while it would level out more, but continue to see as we saw with we just talked about our waste management contract. Well, we saw increases there. We continue to see that with our other service providers as well. Capital needs is probably the big one, and that's something that we continue to look for strategies to address those unfunded projects that council has asked us to work harder on. How do we get more streets done? How do we get maybe some water and sewer projects? Certainly our asset management planning will prioritize those, but we are, as I mentioned, trying to maybe look at set up a separate fund for capital projects so we can build up a little fund balance that's dedicated to those projects. We do both in water and sewer. We do set aside $1,000 each year into a capital fund, so trying to look at those future projects, and that's built into our rate studies and things of that nature. So trying to address those on the what I'll call the enterprise fund side as well. Fortunately, obviously, as I mentioned above, we do continue to see ongoing increases in construction costs as we bid out these projects. Wages, one of the things we're watching, we do have both of our police contracts are coming up this year for a renewal, so we don't know the exact wages for those yet. We are seeing some wage pressures looking at other negotiated contracts in other similar communities, so we are expecting some increases there. We built in a reasonable increase in the budget, and hopefully that our negotiations will be successful as we go forward. Healthcare costs, as we talked about earlier, significant increases. Thankfully, I guess to a certain extent, employees were willing to compromise on some of the healthcare plans. So that even though there's maybe some additional costs for the employees, we were able to make some adjustments in those healthcare plans. So the cost to the city is lesser. It's more in the single-digit range, although employees also saw some increases there. But again, thankfully, we are looking at ways to adjust that. Speaking with Director Getchman, we are going to also explore different brokerage options, different ways we can purchase healthcare that might be able to reduce our costs. So we are continuing to explore those as well. In terms of pension and OPEB obligations, the good news is we are addressing those with our required contributions. We're making those required contributions, and those are built into this budget. And in future years, actually, thankfully, we'll see a little bit of relief on the pension side as we have continued to make those required obligations, and our actuarial studies are looking a little bit more favorable on the pension side, and as well as we are overall very well funded on the OPEB. So the city's done a good job from that perspective. Still impacts that, so we're going to talk a little bit more detail about that. And
I was going to say, just
some of
wanted
those detailed numbers
to provide a graphic here to show you our annual required contribution for pension in last year was about 2.1 million. In the current year, we're at about 2.3 million. In fiscal year 27, we'll be looking closer to 2.4 million. As City Manager Swallow said, in the following years, we'll be seeing a slight reduction. We'll be sure to come to council once we have more fine-tuned figures. The next actuarial from MERS will come out in June, so we're looking forward to that. But we are at about 70% funded. The state of Michigan considers 60% funded to be a goal that you want to be above, so we're in a good place there. Next slide, please, Ben. For OPEB, we are at 103% funded. So currently, we are not paying from the trust just because there is some economic uncertainty with investments. So we've been still expensing that, but we can explore the option in the coming years as we're looking at some areas of relief to actually start paying this expense from the trust.
All right. Next slide, Ben. So water and sewer is something that I know has been kind of a topic going forward. However, I think that the key is that we need to make sure we're covering our costs as well as obviously our significant debt service now for the wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation. Taking a close look at our capital improvement needs going forward. Key will be obviously the rate study that we will conduct in the next fiscal year to make sure we're on track for that. But we continue, we'll see for FY 27, or excuse me, January 27, we're looking at unfortunately having to continue what we have in that roughly 6.5% increase in both water and sewer. And this is, again, there will be also adjustments in the readiness to serve charge, but you see the water and sewer rates proposed for the coming calendar year. Again, these are key elements we cannot fall behind on, and so and as that full debt service comes on for the wastewater plant, we'll have real more precise numbers to plug into that rate study going forward. Next slide. Obviously, the rec center and the ongoing investment in that facility has been a topic of discussion for some time. This year in particular, this fiscal year in particular, is a challenging year in terms of that DHU unit, dehumidification or Dectron unit that needed to be replaced. So you see a significant spike in the general fund contribution to the rec fund. But other than that, it has been more of an inflationary increase year over year. One of the challenges at the rec center right now is from a wage perspective with the increases in the minimum wage. We're seeing our part-time wages go up significantly. If you look at kind of what has been the general fund contribution, that was a question historically, as well as what we project going forward. It's had a lot of variability, and I think the biggest thing there, again, is probably the capital needs that are not going away, but we have obviously been granted that $2.7 million earmark, so that's something that will help curb at least the capital investment. But regardless, we still do have that ongoing pressure for overall operations. So again, I think you see mostly an inflationary increase over time, but we know that that's something that council has asked that we curb. And so in the fiscal year 27 budget, as you see at the far right there, the proposed general fund contribution is that $400,000, and that has been obviously what's overall been kind of accepted over the last few years. But we are cognizant of the fact that it's higher than council would like it to be, and looking at what other alternative funding sources could be applied. And that's something that the REC Task Force implementation team will come back with a report in June on that as well. Which covers that. So next slide, and this is where we're hoping to get some feedback overall from City Council on some of these key provisions. So I want to kick it off with questions to this point and or some of these key decisions from Council that we would like some feedback this evening. But why don't we just, I guess, maybe just start with general questions that you may have.
Treasurer Finch, anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Let me defer to the staff members who are present this evening. Chief Radzik, Engineer Humphreys, DPS Director, Parks and Rec Director. Is there anything you would like to articulate at this time before we jump into our discussion or questions? Oh, all good. I would note, if you're called upon to address a question or concern, please come forward and use the microphone. Make sure that the green light is illuminated at the base. I do want to note for my colleagues, we're about 6:15. We do need to wrap up promptly at 7 o'clock this evening to jump to our next regular meeting. If we do not have consensus tonight, based on a conversation I had with the city manager earlier today, I would recommend that we schedule a special meeting either for next Monday, the 27th, or meet for a special budget work meeting prior to our next regular meeting, which would be in 2 weeks, that first Monday in May. We'll begin with a round of questions, 5 minutes per person. This evening, I'm going to start to my left and into my right, so I'll begin with Councilmember Harmount and end with Councilmember Hulsh. Real quick, and I'll start the timer to apply it to myself as well. Sorry, new phone here. There we go. Real quick, City Manager Swallow, a few things, and they're in no particular order of importance. Employee health insurance, as you're aware, it was Lori Champion, who chairs our risk mitigation initiative, who introduced us to an associate of hers that may be able to assist us with leveraging the economies of scales and getting better options for our employees. I'm sure that's not the only individual or entity we should engage with, but I fully support your efforts to find alternative sources for health insurance to see if we can provide our employees with exceptional products and also save some cost in the interim. As it relates to your suggestion about a capital fund, I think that's worthy of additional evaluation. I think it might be advantageous to establish said fund. I would recommend that the chair of our finance committee call a meeting sometime in the next several months to vet that further and maybe come back to council with a recommendation or some thoughts on that. You asked about what the goal should be vis-a-vis public transit in the Saline community, specifically in regards to our ongoing contract with People's Express. I would like to see us get back to where we were 5-10 years ago, which is that People's Express provided 2 dedicated vehicles to the city of Saline. One that remained within the corporate limits of our city during normal hours of operation, and one that was dedicated to take people largely to health appointments at either U of M or St. Joe during the designated service hours. As it relates to park improvements, I'd like to see some dollars set aside within the general fund for park improvements. Director Lambert is well aware of this. We did engage with several external entities about providing funding for our rec center. Obviously, those efforts will continue. We talked to several who, while they were interested and while they saw value in the rec center, it didn't really align with their mission and goals. But I do think park improvements that are accessible to all of our residents and visitors alike would be something that they would be amenable to funding. So I think that park improvements, specifically what we heard about from our Parks Commission, could likely achieve funding from an external source. Master plan updates, I think your recommendation there is spot on. I know I've talked about this in years past, so has Councilmember Gearba and several others. I'm not going to give up on this. I would like to see some time or money set aside in future years to evaluate existing site plans. So we have some site plans on the books that date back several decades. Many of the requirements and stipulations in said site plans are not being maintained or the existing entity, the deed holder, has deviated from what was approved and sanctioned by the city of Saline. And I think it's in our community's interest, particularly our citizens' quality of life, to revisit that and to make sure that folks are in compliance with the standards established by this body and or by Planning Commission. Just wrapping up here, grant writing, I think adding that to a key component of our economic development director would be of value. I do follow a number of regional mayors online, and I saw the State of the City address that was given by the mayor of Dearborn Heights. He's relatively new to the office, and I think in the early weeks of his tenure, they established as a department head a grant writing position, which seems to have been extremely advantageous in bringing in external revenue to the city of Dearborn Heights for core services. So maybe we could reach out to our counterparts there and learn a little bit more, maybe review the job description that was drafted for said position. I also think that when Elle Cole was here serving as deputy city manager, one of the things that I think she really excelled at and what we benefited from was her devotion devotion to certain special projects. So I hope that would be a component of this new economic development director as well. And then your question about the rec center and what kind of support it should be receiving from the general fund. This is my opinion. I'm just speaking for me, but I think it should be about half of what you're recommending long term. I think you said it's about $400,000 is what's proposed in the upcoming budget. I think our goal should be to cut that in half in the ensuing years. Again, that's my opinion. Councilmember Harmont, I threw a lot at you fast, but I wanted to get through in the designated time. Councilmember Harmont, can I transition to you if you have questions, concerns, or observations about the proposed budget?
No, it sounds like the headcount increase seems pretty reasonable, and I just had a question about, are there other communities that have the similar roadmap for the economic development director as far as the alignment of job duties? And is there anything else that you would think to recommend from an alignment standpoint?
Yes, so obviously I think if you look at communities our size, maybe you don't see that economic development role as much, but if you just barely, slightly larger communities, maybe that is a very common role. And I think it's an important role for us in particular due to some of the challenges we're facing and obviously some of the strategic goals that council has set forward. I would like once, if this is approved and we get into the hiring process, looking at, how the internal staffing structure in terms of reporting to, for example, I believe our community engagement specialist would make more sense to align that person underneath an economic development department. So shifting that out of IT into economic development. Also, I know there's been some discussion about the administrative assistant role that works with council and the city mayor's office. Well, they've been filling a great role in the treasurer's office in the interim. If that position is refilled also, then that individual could work more closely under an economic development umbrella as well. So some internal restructuring to truly create, if you will, a department as opposed to just an individual.
Maybe we can align incentives to the grant achievement as well. The only other thing that I was thinking about, and I keep thinking about, and good job for the city of Saline for the property taxes going down, for the things that we can control, and maintaining consistency with some of the other items. Is there anything that we could do to stop the escalation of the rates? Is there anything that could be employed, that could have a different outcome than the escalation that we're outlining in our rates?
So I think the key area there is on the capital improvement side. Obviously, the submittal that we made this year to our federal and state legislators was for water and sewer capital, because anything we can essentially take off the ratepayers and look at a different funding source, that is, certainly what we want to do. But in terms of, operations, I don't see, we're fairly lean staff in that regard. Obviously, that's what we have pulled back a little bit and said we're only going to add one position instead of two this year to reevaluate that, make sure that we're essentially from a staffing standpoint, we're kind of at that minimum staffing level that we can. So those are two areas that we're looking closely at. I think this plan should provide us a little more in energy efficiency. I think energy efficiency is an area that we could look at, though, also in terms of the equipment that's there and replacing as we go forward, replacing some of the equipment. So those are some areas we're looking at to try and keep those rates a little bit lower. But unfortunately, the big driver right now is that debt service for the bonds for the wastewater treatment plant. So that's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Thank you, I'm done.
Thank you, Councilmember Harmont. Councilmember Gearbaugh, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Basically, I want to focus on just a couple items of when we look at our projections for revenue and so forth, looking at real taxes. Can you explain, we had projected, we had an amended budget of 7.7 million approximately, but we're ending up projecting about 8.3 for this year. So is that just the new properties that have come online that we didn't anticipate for projections?
That initial projection, it was created last year. It was just done very early in the process. It could have been evaluated a little bit sooner after March board, but the reality is that values just came in much higher after March board last year.
And then looking at what we're projecting forward for next year, we basically have just flat.
I would anticipate somewhere in the 2 to 3%, kind of that standard inflationary, because we don't anticipate a significant amount of additions in the upcoming year.
So even with the oncoming of Lair Farms, a number of those homes coming in that new phase, we don't anticipate that adding a significant amount to the.
I would have to know how many homes exactly, but I don't think it will be as significant as we're seeing in the.
It's about 50 per phase. So the phase that Mr. Gearbaugh is referencing is about 50.
Yeah, it won't be life-changing.
And then looking at personal property tax, coming up a 23% increase, what is that? That seems significantly.
Again, since our values are much higher than originally anticipated, it translates directly to that calculation.
Okay, because from my perspective, I was thinking those were going down as a result of changes in the state legislature. So I wasn't sure we were going to have that much of an increase going forward. Then also looking at some other things. Again, I've inquired again, asking for membership numbers related to the rec center. As I look at the numbers and the projection for the membership revenue line, it shows that we basically are having no increase in members. The dollar amount is fixed. When you look at it from even adding in a 7% fee increase or 6% fee increase, it's still the same amount. So it appears that there's no increase in membership considered in the budget moving forward, which I think would be a significant part of the revenue generation for that operation.
Unfortunately, we did see what we're projecting is a small decline from FY25 to 26.
Yeah, and that's kind of got a concern.
We don't, and obviously that's part, I think, due to some of our closure issues that we had, that we maybe lost a few members with that. I know there's, particularly like the DH unit, things of that nature. I think we had some people that were maybe not happy with the current state. So with that, we do, as you noted, we are proposing it's an 8% increase, I believe, overall in membership rates.
7 or 8.
We haven't put that together for 20, but we did a 5%
Okay.
for 2026. So we still have to evaluate 2027.
So, yeah, and then so obviously we're budgeting an increase from the current fiscal year to FY27. But again, that's still in line with historic levels.
For me, it would be helpful to have the membership numbers and get an understanding of what's been happening month to month in consideration. That doesn't, so that we understand that the narrative that's been being delivered isn't consistent with what the numbers are showing. The other ones I'm looking at, so really all the new payroll positions, I do see that we have an accountant position posted right now currently. Is that a redefined position or is that an open position?
It's a redefined position. It's really we had kind of I'm not sure the exact title for the front desk / support person that was there.
I believe it's like a
purchasing manager role with that. So it is a little bit redefined, yes, to really more focus on a little bit higher level accounting.
And you feel that's okay without, my concern is customer service and making sure that we have the sufficient aspect that we've had concerns in the past of making sure that people are available, that when people come in and everything else, but I know we're shifting more to online, so just
looking at more, certainly BSNA has a number of tools that, for payment online, et cetera. So with that, I mean, the person will still be expected to provide front desk support. This is more of an entry level position, but a little bit higher skill level.
And as we talk about fee increases and such related to wastewater treatment, knowing that you mentioned in our recent letter that there's an S&P call related to the ability for the fund and its cash flow, as per our audit, adding a new position would seem that might be making that even an increased concern. So however we assess the ability for us to repay our debt through the wastewater treatment plant and everything, I think that's going to drive more whether you should hire the new position or not. I hope that our numbers can be adjusted so that it adjusts for those staff people, but I think that's the biggest call.
Triggered the S&P review was exactly the same thing that that was brought up as part of the state when they reviewed our audit. We did have a dip in cash, and so primarily because of we have obviously large pay applications coming in from the contractor, and we'd not been fully reimbursed from our financing sources, the state revolving fund. So they picked up on, quite honestly, the same thing, but it is something where, because of the debt service, we're going to have to be watching that wastewater fund more closely.
I gotta stop you there, Mr. Gearbaugh. We'll have another round for questions, I'm sure. So that concludes the initial 5 minutes. Councilmember Dillon, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for going back through and providing a little bit more information in the PowerPoint. Excuse me. I I appreciate that we're tying decision-making to strategic planning, but I will say that at some point in the very near future, this body needs to deep dive into the strategic plan, because when you're looking at it, there are several items that were year one and year two goals that we have not even touched yet. And so obviously that's, an idea, but we need to look a little deeper and either reassess what our priorities are or recalculate the timelines to make sure that we're balancing it out. I don't want to just look like we're picking and choosing from certain line items to backfill and to match what we have in the budget. There were things that were in specific orders, and I want to make sure that we're actually addressing those. So I'm hoping that can be a conversation that we have in the very near future. And specifically, one of them, and we've had this discussion before, was asset management. And this is a constant conversation during the asset management, is that if we're going GIS, we need to have very specific measurables with that as to what is being done, what percentage has been completed, so that we know when we are making decisions using that information, we have the actual data behind it. So I'd like to do that. One of the other things that we've talked about, you touched about a little bit here, was safety. Things that come up that, again, fall off. There was a whole safety protocol that we had talked about, council chambers being one. The windows were replaced, and unfortunately, they didn't quite make the right decision with those windows, and so they're not considered exits, and that opened up a different shortcoming to other things. But there was bulletproofing that was supposed to be done. There were some locks that were supposed to be done. There's a staff member position that's here during council meetings that I think needs to be reassessed. So I think there's some opportunities that we need to look back on those that we're not quite hitting the mark when we've talked about things. And I do like the idea of having a separate capital fund, because one of the things that we have noticed is that we do seem like we've got excess funds, and it's because we have projects that were not completed. And so I think it would be a better tracking system for that. You talked about software. One of the things that I'm going to absolutely push for is that there be a tech review committee created with people that are subject matter experts. We are constantly flip-flopping between technologies. And we were never even trained on Granicus, and now it's out the door and we're bringing the next thing in. And if that's fine, if that's the position in which we want to go, but with that, there needs to be training, there needs to be review of these processes, and make sure that this is what it is for all parties involved. And that everybody is able to utilize and benefit from those programs. When we talked about budgets, I wanted to make sure that training, I appreciate, I put a huge value on training, so I appreciate that we are increasing the training budget. I do want to make sure, I haven't really seen it in the actual budget, but it's probably in there somewhere, but just to confirm that we do have robust training budgets within our committees, especially those that are decision-making committees. And that there's requirements that in order to participate in those decision-making committees, that people have had the adequate training for them. I'm running really to People's Express, I think that we definitely need to have a conversation about what we need, and then work through the dollar aspect of it. I'm looking at all of our surrounding municipalities that are offering free People's Express right now, and yet we're looking at, because they are using their senior millage. So understanding is most of our clientele seniors that should be falling within that millage, or do we have another population of people that are accessing that service, or is there other ways? And then as far as the rec center, I am going to keep saying that at this point, I would like to see formal notification as to the city being reimbursed the $1 million for the Dectron unit out of the grant dollars. I know that that was something that was being investigated. I'd like to understand. I think first and foremost, the city should recoup the money that it fronted to the rec center for that. And then we can move forward with our contributions beyond that.
Okay, that's 5 minutes has elapsed. Thank you for that. Councilmember DeLorco, you have 5 minutes for questions or comments pertaining to the proposed budget.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start with some comments and then I outline a couple of questions I wanted to ask. In reference to key decisions from the council, I certainly support an economic development director position. And the key priority there should be that that person has some grant writing experience. I agree that that's a valuable skill set that's lacking in our community and provide a lot of opportunities for increased revenues and missed deadlines and tracking of when these deadlines are coming up and getting applications in on time, so on and so forth. Public transportation is personally a key priority for me in the city as we think about our aging senior citizen population and just people that aren't able to afford cars or have driver's license for whatever the case may be. I would like to understand more about why the costs have increased so much for what services were being provided at what level, the path to getting back what the mayor said to having 2 dedicated vehicles in the city. Is that going to be an exorbitant cost, or is that something realistic that we can manage to achieve through being creative there? I continue to wait for recommendations from the implementation team analysis on the rec center general fund contributions and how we can offset our general fund revenue debt there. For capital investment priorities, my understanding is that our main capital improvement for FY 2027 is the Woodland Culvert, coming in at about $1.5 million. Are there other key capital improvements you would like us to identify or prioritize moving forward?
Well, I think when we look at that capital improvement plan, certainly just as that is a living document. And so we have identified, you're right, that in terms of from the road standpoint, that is the major one. Obviously, there's also significant city hall improvements. There's also vehicle replacements identified in that capital improvement plan. But in terms of the roads, you're right, that's the Woodland one. And that would be followed on by the resurfacing of Woodland Drive. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on the water and sewer side. Obviously, we're laser focused right now on the plant, but that will become, as we have identified funding for sewer lining going forward, and also CCTVing of the sewer lines and things of that nature. So certainly through the asset management committee, we hope to, bring those, what's next, so to speak. And one of the things directive actually working with Engineer Humphreys on is those unfunded projects, that list that were identified in the capital improvement plan. There are ways we could maybe start to chip away at those, either through debt service, whether we look at additional bonding. And so I guess going forward, I would also ask council to take a look at that unfunded list, and we'll bring you forward through asset management and through obviously our continued analysis of what we think a few of those projects that could be bundled potentially to do additional work. But that's where we'll ask council to focus on, is that unfunded list. Is there things there that we could potentially move forward?
Okay, yeah, I like your idea of further defining the assigned fund balance into more specific capital projects. That seems like a good thing to do there. And that brings me to my next question about debt service. I'm actually struggling as I work through the document, and it's probably my own fault, that I'm not able to put together the debt that the city currently has issued for what projects and the timeline for repayment schedules, amount owed each month for debt service, because I imagine that at some point, we may be forced to bond some of these road projects, and I want to understand how much debt we're already
Yeah,
maintaining.
so it is scattered a little bit in this particular document. There is a summary in the audit that I think, and I know you sent that this afternoon, and I will get you, work with Treasurer Finch on probably pulling that out of the audit. And maybe
Okay.
if just even a copy of those pages and or creating a spreadsheet that shows each of the, obviously these are general fund obligations, these are water and sewer obligations. This is our current payment, and this is, when that payment or that bond will expire. So I think there's a way to summarize that utilizing the audit. Obviously the numbers are in the budget, but they are scattered around. I don't know if you want to comment further on that.
I would just say, if you're looking in the actual budget general ledger documents, it's Department 905. Within any given fund, 905 is the debt service department. But city manager Swell is correct, that's really just the payments. So as far as an
That's part
overall,
of the equation, yeah.
right,
But that's helpful.
as far as the overall debt summary, I can certainly put something together. There's some detail in the audit as well as a footnote that summarizes from the financial statements. And then internally, we obviously keep some summary documents for our own tracking as far as payments.
Yeah, okay, I apologize for my late
That's okay.
delivery of questions.
I got to stop you there, Mr. Delarico. I'm sure we'll have time for some additional questions.
Okay.
And I will note too,
I agree.
I will note too, and it came from Treasurer Finch and from then Deputy City Manager Cole, but there was a line in my January State of the City address about allowable debt and the city's debt obligations and how much we could still incur, which is rather significant. I'm not advocating that we do that, but we're in a pretty advantageous position vis-a-vis debt.
I don't want to take any more debt than we need to, but at some point, we may need to look at some of this.
Sure. Councilmember House, you have 5 minutes if you'd like it.
Yeah, so first I want to say, City Manager Swallow and Treasurer Finch, I really appreciate seeing the tie between how the budget intends to operationalize our strategic plan. I think it's important to, I've said it before in other settings, but I think budgets are moral documents, and so it's good to see which specific priorities our dollars are going to support. So I definitely appreciated seeing that. I have a few questions, just kind of observations. With the GIS system, is that, you mentioned like a public facing aspect of it, is that already live?
It is, yeah. It was,
I would say portion, I can expand on it.
that was planned, but I wasn't sure how.
Well, yes, I don't know how many of you have actually looked at our lead and copper website that is linked on our current, if you just type in City of Saline lead and copper, a resident can go on and look up their actual house, see if we've been out there, see if we, what year was put in, so I won't get into the big, long depth of the lead and copper, but that's one example of an application that is now public facing. Our capital improvement plan is now on our website also facing, so those are a couple applications that are currently public facing.
Awesome.
So, and then it does have the summary projects for the next several fiscal years, and then you can click on them. Is that all?
The capital improvement plan one, yes. So the capital improvement plan one specifically that's public facing, which is on, so you go on the City of Saline engineering page, there's a capital improvement portion. On that are links as the actual map that you can dig into current capital plans and links to the additional information about them and such.
Is there any sort of information around how a user could navigate or how they navigate within the site?
The specific, so it's only, the two applications are up and they're kind of, I guess, self-serve, but no, I don't know that there's a tutorial or anything on there. Sarah's posted things about them, how to use them. Actually, I should say, I know Sarah has posted find it here type things, but I wouldn't say that we have a tutorial per se online.
Okay.
Yep.
Moving on. So one of the things that I think I have brought up or mentioned is within fostering open communication. I think we have a couple of tools. I think GIS is something that will go towards that. But then I also think about our citizens reporting tool and our citizens dashboard. I didn't see any sort of allocations or if we had any plans to make improvements to those, but just as particularly from some of the things I've heard from citizens in regards to the citizens reporting tool, I would recommend us looking at potentially making some investment in that tool, improving that functionality in this coming fiscal year. When I think about organizational effectiveness and kind of echoing Councilor Dillon's point in regards to training. One of the things that I've kind of thought about is, have we been able to kind of quantify the dollar amount? Have we been able to quantify our talent and skill gaps within a dollar amount? And then I guess I would ask to both Treasurer Finch and Manager Swallow, do we feel as though our current allocations with training are going to address some of those talent and or skill gaps? And then two, how are we planning to measure the effectiveness of those training dollars across our departments? And then when moving kind of to the rec center, I think, well, two final points. One on the rec center, I think that we all have varying degrees in regards to how much we feel as though there should be a general fund contribution to the rec center. What I think is a far more pertinent question is, when are we going to stop making that contribution? I think that, especially being on the implementation team, I think that if we are able to set an end date saying, hey, this will be the last fiscal year in which we will receive any allocation, and I think that gives the implementation team a North Star or an end to work backwards from. So just kind of wanting to reframe the conversation there a little bit and thinking about what is the off-ramp for that contribution. And then finally, I know we've kind of talked about, in particular with the Economic Development Director position, as grant writing being one of the marquee skills that we're looking for. From what I've heard and what I've noticed within the city, and this is no shade to anybody, I think an important skill should be project management, because I think, and I would even go so far as to say that it might be useful to hire a project manager within our city staff department, because I think when we think about, projects that we start and then we don't stop, when we think about someone that is, their whole job is to make sure that projects are completed and finished, I think that is a skill set across the board that could be improved. And so I would definitely recommend someone who has some incredibly solid project management skills in that position.
Got to stop you there, Councilmember Hausch. We're past the 5 minutes, but thank you for those questions and comments. My colleagues and I threw quite a bit at you. Would you care to respond before I work my way across the dais again?
Just a few of those that have boxed in terms of, things that, I think we are really going to need to think on the public transportation side. That is a significant increase just to get kind of back to what we'll call status quo. And so we will continue to negotiate with People's Express, but that's going to be a challenge to what I'll call increase service or increase level of service there. Certainly just trying to move around a little bit here in terms of the rec center, because that was brought up several times. I think that's going to be a key challenge in that I don't know that we'll ever get completely away from general fund support unless there was a separate outside funding source in terms of millage or some other thing, some other form of support. So that is, I don't know that we'll ever get to zero. And so that is particularly when we look at capital, we are trying to address that through grant writing and other corporate support, things of that nature. But I don't know that if we keep the rec center, we'll get to zero unless there's some other completely separate funding source. Moving around, software, something that one of the things we did do this year is we did a deep dive into all the software we have, all the applications that we're using, what their costs are. I agree that we don't fully leverage those, and we need some training from both staff perspective as well as council. Looking at project management, that's also the facilities manager is going to be, particularly for buildings related things, a key role for them. We may need, I've actually talked with Director McNeil about, do we need to supplement that with outside expertise? In Tecumseh, we had a general contractor who had an architect on staff, and we use them to help scope projects, manage projects. So there's also health savings, which is so organizational effectiveness, definitely turns the talent skills out. I don't know that's a good way to measure that. That's the one way we do measure is, people achieve licenses, people achieve certifications that we need for our own, our own applications, but we'll continue to think about that one as well. We'll definitely pursue creation of a separate capital improvement fund and looking at assigning, some of that fund balance to those specific projects. I do think that's important, just so it's away from the general fund a little bit, from an operational standpoint, that we're focused more on that. What did I miss?
I think that's pretty good. Obviously, there are questions or concerns that come up in the ensuing days, or folks want to have a more detailed, focused conversation about any of the issues, questions, concerns they brought up. They're certainly free to do so. Two things before I work my way through the dais for one abbreviated comment or question period. City Manager Swallow, I'm assuming that in the ensuing days you'll follow up with Mayor Pro Tem Rice to make sure that she's reviewed the presentation and to address any questions and concerns that she has in advance of our next regular meeting, or if council decides to organize a special meeting. I do want to echo, and I also mentioned this in my State of the City address, comments that were made earlier this evening by Councilmember Dillon. I do think it is absolutely essential that sometime in the next 60 to 90 days we organize a retreat between council, yourself, and the department heads to revisit our strategic plan. I suspect that the strategic goal areas will probably remain intact, although there may be some wordsmithing to those key priorities, but I do think the timelines and specific goals may be adjusted and new things may be added and items removed. I do think it's critical that document help to guide future financial and budget decisions. So hopefully that's something that maybe Maggie or someone else on staff can help to organize, but I would recommend a retreat sometime in the next 30 to 60 days, probably an evening event, and then I suspect we'll have to come back to revisit the document at a more abbreviated session sometime in the weeks following. Let me start again to my left and into my right. We only have about 10 minutes, so if you have one additional really time-sensitive, pertinent question, I would welcome you to ask that, but I'm also going to ask each of you a question, which is, are you comfortable moving forward with the budget, or would you like to schedule an additional session, and what is your preference in terms of scheduling that additional session? If you think it's imperative or appropriate, would you prefer to do it next Monday or before our next regular council meeting, that first Monday in May? Again, I'll start with Councilmember Harmount and end with Councilmember Halsh.
As we're adding the additional headcounts, I guess the one request that I would make is it's additional headcount. So what is the additional benefit to the, tying it, we need to tie it to what the additional benefit is to the residents of Saline. And then with regards to the budget, I've been on the Finance Planning Committee, and I'm comfortable with the budget the way that it's been proposed.
Okay, fair enough. Councilmember Gearbaugh.
I need to answer his questions because I don't think I did it at the last part of these four aspects that are up here. Rec Center, we need to deal with the $1 million shortfall. That's really the capital improvement projects. The shortfall that we have currently with the general fund contribution for operations is its own issue. So there's more to that than that. People's Express, I don't know if we should continue that at all. I think that we're not getting the work out of it, or the aspect that we have. We should be evaluating what other options we could on that one. Planning and community development is where I want to see additional money going towards. We need to plan for our growth. We haven't done a contingency for the lost tax capture that we lost for the loss of the LDFA certification. Not the certification, but you know what I mean, yep. Agreement. And then the other thing is, when we look at capital investment priorities, I'd like to see us investing a lot more money into potholes, sidewalks, some of those things that we can do, which are short-term wins, because we have a lot of trip hazards, those type of things that could be addressed quickly, and some street little repairs that we've done in the past that don't require an entire redo of a street. And then lastly, the one thing we've talked about is the communication contract and what is happening with that and how we can eventually evaluate that and see how that's being rolled out and implemented and addressed that way. I'm fine with if we need another meeting, but moving forward, for me, the only thing is with the Economic Development Director position, I would recommend that maybe that be a 3-year contracted position so we can evaluate it over a 3-year period, and if it's not working at that point in time, it just simply is eliminated.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Gerbaugh. Mayor Pro Tem, or excuse me, Councilmember Dillon, additional questions and thoughts on whether you would like an additional budget meeting?
Thank you. The Economic Development Director position, this is something we've talked about now for several years. In our last conversations about this, because one of the things I want to put out there right now is we've talked about downtown and we've talked about industrial. What about the rest of the city? Because that was the big aspect with economic development. Everybody that was not on the Four Corners was like, hey, what about us? And so if we're doing economic development, it has to be a citywide initiative.
Yeah, if I may, the city manager can elaborate. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I think that the position would not only prioritize downtown and the industrial park, but all of our commercial districts and offer assistance to both large and small businesses.
Thank you. And so I want to make sure about that. I would like to see job descriptions for each of the positions that are being created, because when I look at the Economic Development Director position right now, frankly, some of those tasks have fallen under the city manager in the past. So if we're removing tasks from the city manager's plate, understanding how does that flow, and does that free up something within your purview to do? And now we've added this whole element of grant writing. We keep going in circles about grant writing, and that's a very specific talent. And understanding how much time is this position going to devote to grant writing, and is there a payback on it? So I'd really like to understand what that's going to look like for us. The other aspect is, and we sat at a table with Saline Main Street that said, we may need to claw back some of your money to include into this economic development position. That was a part of the conversation, so we need to revisit that idea also. And so I would like to have further conversations about it. I would like to see a very comprehensive plan as to what your vision is for our organizational chart. What positions you feel we need, what positions, because we're migrating positions into other things. We've had people move into things and it didn't work out. Now we have sort of two people in a position. We've gotten rid of positions and we've allocated dollars and responsibilities to other people, and now we're backfilling positions. And so I really like to sort of see a holistic look as to what the vision is for the city as far as staffing and what the future plan is.
Thoughts about additional budget meeting?
I mean, I can go through some of my questions on my own. I guess, is this document available in something in which we can manipulate? Because one of the things that we had talked about was trying to sort of understand and look holistically at line items, you know, and that we didn't seem to get that information, at least not in a format in which I'm able to understand. So just sort of understanding, is there a way in which we can have a searchable document?
We have taken this out of BSNA and put it into a spreadsheet, so we can provide you that spreadsheet.
Okay.
But again, obviously, we just have to be careful with document control. Obviously, what you have is going to be for your own.
Right, it would just be for my own purposes to be able to find information. Thank you.
Great. All right, Councilmember Del Orco.
I'd just really like to thank the staff for taking the time to put together this presentation. It was really helpful to distill down some of what the key priorities are and the direction that you need from council at this time. I think I can work through most of my questions over email with the city treasurer and with city manager offline, and I'd like to move forward with adopting the budget at this time.
Very good. Councilmember Halsch.
Yeah, so just quickly going back to the point I made about quantifying talent gaps, I think that just looking at how often are we hiring consultants or hiring third parties to fulfill a duty that we don't have someone on staff to fulfill is kind of what I was thinking with that quantification. As far as the budget, I would be comfortable moving forward as it's presented. So no need for any additional meetings for me.
Easy enough. Okay, so it seems like there's consensus to move forward and take the necessary action at our subsequent meetings. Of course, in the interim, please direct questions to the city manager, city treasurer, and the document that Councilmember Dillon requested, I'm assuming, can be sent out to everyone on council, all 7 of the voting members.
If anybody wants to meet individually, we can do that with treasurer. I know a couple of taking advantage of that already. So obviously, and then anything, we'll try and highlight any changes we make up between now and adoption.
I do think, if I may, obviously, I mentioned at the top of the meeting, I see it as very advantageous to establish an economic development director because we don't have a point person on staff doing that currently. It generally falls to the city manager and mayor, and I think you and I are both still comfortable assisting with that. But having a standalone person that dedicated the vast majority of their time, I think would result in some tangible gains for the city. I think Mr. Gearbaugh, Councilmember Gearbaugh, suggestion had some merit, which is to maybe do a 3-year contract to evaluate whether the individual is performing and contributing to the betterment of the community. So I would encourage you to look at that a little bit deeper in the ensuing weeks and perhaps report back out when we revisit the budget in early May. If there's nothing further to be brought forward regarding the proposed 2027 budget, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this work meeting at 6:57, noting that we will meet or start a regular meeting promptly at 7. Moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Harmount to adjourn. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. I'd like to call this Saline City Council meeting to order. If you'd please rise and join my colleagues and I for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we transition to roll call and attendance, it is my obligation this evening to notify the community of the recent passing of our former council colleague and mayor, Pat Little. Pat served on council, then as mayor, then back on city council. He was instrumental in the development of the first Saline Celtic Festival. He served on a number of regional boards, including the Saline Area Fire Board and Watts, and during his tenure as mayor, guided the city through some difficult economic times and also pursued some very successful economic development initiatives. We extend our condolences and our sympathy to his wife Sheila, children Bethany and Pat Jr., and grandkids and all of Pat's loved ones during this profoundly sad time. So if you please join my colleagues and I in a moment of silence for the late Mayor Patrick Little. Thank you very much. Members present this evening are Council Members Delorco, Dillon, Gearbaugh, Halsh, Harmount, and Mayor Morrow. From City staff, we have City Manager Swallow, Clerk Royal, City Engineer Humphreys, Treasurer Finch. I believe our DPS Director left, but Police Chief Radzik is also present, along with our Deputy DPW Director, Mr. Marion. For those of you who are in the audience this evening, welcome. There are copies of the agenda on the back table, along with a sign-in sheet and listening devices if you require them. At this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted, unless there are amendments.
Moved as submitted.
Moved by Gearbaugh to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Delorco. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. As was noted during our work meeting, Mayor Pro Tem Rice will be absent from both meetings this evening. Is there a motion now to excuse her absence?
So moved.
Oh boy, I'm going to do the converse of the last motion. I'm going to let Delorco be the mover and Gearbaugh be the second. All those in favor of excusing the absence of Mayor Pro Tem Rice, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We come now to public comments on agenda items, which actually we should actually probably change that heading because we no longer require individuals to speak specifically to agenda items. They can speak to any issue they care to address. So under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward to make comment to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Those wishing to speak are requested but not required to state their name and address for the record. Please note that City Council will not answer questions during this initial public comment period. Please come to the podium and make sure the green light is illuminated at the base of that microphone. And we welcome your thoughts and opinions this evening.
Linda Jahar, 108 East Henry Street, Saline. I just came to add my personal note of appreciation for the late Mayor Little. When I joined City Council as an appointee to fill an incompleted term, he had 14 months left on council. It was his last term. And then Mayor Driscoll decided that it would be good for me to sit next to him so that he could help me along, getting used to being on council. And he was very helpful and very kind. And so I learned a lot from him directly and also just by observing the way he conducted himself as a council member. And I really appreciated that.
Thank you for those comments, Linda. Much appreciated. Are there additional citizen comments this evening? Again, you have 3 minutes once you begin.
Yes, I'd like to echo those comments. Pat was a wonderful guy. You only get so many Pat Littles in your life. I was really glad to call him my friend, and I learned a lot from him. He was really easy to work with. I felt very bad that he's passed because he was a great guy. But on another note, I guess I'm one of those people in town, I feel we spend too much money on studies. It would be nicer if we could put some of that money towards the actual problem. And tonight, we're going to talk about the stop log study. What's our deliverables? What can we expect from that study? What do we expect to walk away with? That's my comments.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate your comments. Any additional citizen comments this evening? No? Oh, one more? Okay.
Hi, Karen Peters, 396 Saline River Drive. I'd like to talk tonight about what Jim was just talking about, the proposal about preparing the stop logs. I know we talked at it at a previous meeting, so I'm anxious to hear if there's any update on that. But a couple of questions that I had is, I don't see how we can wait until November to vote on whether we're going to repair or remove the dam if we're looking at an outlay of $580,000 to repair the stop logs. I think we need to make that decision sooner than later, and of course you all know I'm in favor of keeping the dam and repairing it, because it would seem pretty foolish to me to put out all that money to repair the stop logs, and then if you end up removing the dam, that's just money down the drain. The other question I had about the proposal that from Fisher Contracting, I read in their time and materials estimate, they said, this is not considered a not to exceed budget to the lack of details, which contradicts what was said in the letter from Engineer Humphreys. It says to acknowledge receipt of the memo from City Engineer Humphreys to award or not award a time and material contract with Fisher Contracting Company in an amount not to exceed $580,000. So the engineer is saying it's not going to exceed, but Fisher is saying it's not a not to exceed estimate. So that's confusing to me. And one other point on the stop logs, I was looking today over the last inspection that we had on the dam, which was in August of 23, performed by Spicer. And in the category, it said stop logs and stop log channels, leakage, deterioration, corrosion. And under all those categories, it said NA, which I'm assuming is non-applicable. So what I'm confused about, does that mean they didn't even examine the stop logs during the inspection in 23? And now in 26, all of a sudden, we're in a panic mode to repair them because they've deteriorated. So did they not look at them? Was that an oversight on their part? Or are they just saying not applicable because nothing was found? So I hope maybe later in the meeting I can get some answers to these questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional citizen comments this evening? Then I'm going to defer to the city clerk. Were there any written comments provided in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted the remarks read at this time? Yes, easy enough. There are no presentations on the agenda. I don't know if the software management allows you to remove that, Clerk Royal, but if there are no presentations, I think it's just confusing to the public. So when there are not presentations, I think that header can be deleted. We move on to the consent portion of tonight's agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
I'd like to remove 26-71 and 26-76 for discussion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Harmount. So moved by Dillon, seconded by Harmount to approve the consent agenda as amended, noting those two omissions. If there's no discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We'll come to those issues momentarily, but first is unfinished business. 26-54, construction and engineering of the mill race inspection and stop log contract award. Let's start with the motion simply to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Engineer Humphreys. Moved by I will try to slow down, but you can't interrupt the meeting, okay? All right, I appreciate the comments, but you are in the audience. The audience is derived from the Latin to listen, okay? So you just please don't interrupt the meeting. I will try my best to slow down and accommodate your concern. We have a motion. Was that moved by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon?
Correct.
Okay, very good. City Manager Swallow, would you like to begin?
Sure, thank you. In terms of the stop log situation and the contract proposal from Fisher as well as the engineering, we actually do have some additional information from some inspections that occurred relative to the the location of the stop logs, as well as what occurs downstream underneath US 12, et cetera. So surprisingly, the culvert and some of the trash rack and some of the other components of that structure are in better shape than what we had anticipated, to be honest, based on that. So with that, as well as based on council's direction, I think everyone agrees that the cost, and just to explain the $580,000 cost, that was the quote from Fisher was $525,000, and so there was some contingency built into that as well, and just in case we had other work to be done in terms of that particular location. Based on this, we also had two things we're working on over the last month. One thing we did accomplish is we do now have a preliminary legal opinion as to what would be required to potentially lower the lake level, if that is an option for us to explore, and what the process would be required for that process. And so I know I've shared some of that with council. We can discuss that in more detail going forward. Second thing, we actually just today were able to speak with Eagle representative to talk about what are our obligations. We felt like and the Eagle representatives from the dam safety, we felt like it's relatively stable right now with the steel plates that have been inserted into the dam, and so they also felt that that it's not as urgent as to move forward with the project, as well as they did explain to us some of the requirements that would be required if we wanted to lower the lake level. Some of those permitting requirements would be surveying, what aquatic species might be impacted. At what point would we have a sediment movement issue if the sediment moved downstream as part of the lake level adjustment, things of that nature. So based on this new information and the fact that it looks relatively stable and that Eagle is willing to allow us some time to research this further, I would recommend that we postpone this at least 60 days for a decision.
Thank you. And the city manager and I actually had an opportunity to speak about this issue earlier today. I would concur with that assessment. And so it's likely after we vote on the motion to acknowledge receipt, I'll offer a motion or entertain a motion to postpone. Our conversation focused on somewhere within the 60 to 90-day period. If it was 60 days, that would take us out to our second meeting in June, which would be the 15th. Or if council was amenable to going to 90 days, it would take us to our second meeting in July, which would be the 20th. But I do think it would be appropriate to allow a little bit more time for evaluation here in the same breath. I would like to take action sometime during the subsequent quarter of the calendar year. Are there questions for the city manager? Looks like just about everybody has got a question. Let's start with Harmon, and I'll work my way right down the dais.
And this is supported, same opinion by City Engineer Humphreys.
Make sure the green light is illuminated at the base of that mic, Engineer Humphreys, before you comment to Councilmember Harmon's question.
So the quote you have in front of you was put together without the benefit of any inspection of the downstream mill race. It was also put together with the assumption that we were trying to get this expedited and done as quickly as possible. Although I do not recommend sending our staff downstream of the failed stop logs. That is what we are currently exploring, if there would be a contractor that would take on that liability of working downstream of the failed stop logs. So although and I am not a dam expert, obviously, but I would not myself put my current professional engineer on working downstream of the failed stop logs, but that's again something we are pursuing with other contractors at this time to see if that's a cheaper option. Now, the other option that City Manager Swallow spoke about, which is drawing down the lake to achieve the same, is something I think we can also pursue, but again, will probably just delay the project. So what is in front of you was the most expedited project to get it done in an expedited fashion. I think if we're going to sharpen our pencils and look for other options, I'm not sure if any of them will be successful yet, but we, I think, have a little bit of time to do so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Gearby, I believe you had a question?
Question, or could you just clarify who did the inspections? That we, as our staff, did not do those inspections because they were accessed through from a private access.
The person that is a retired engineer, yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dillon, did you have a question?
Go ahead, and we'll go through the line, and I'll see if my question is answered by others.
Okay, Councilmember Del Orco, any questions?
I just wanted to make a comment. I'm amenable to postpone to a date certain, but I think it would be better to do it sooner rather than later in the 60-day, closer to the 90-day, because whatever option we go with to make these improvements, it should be done in this construction season. And I think there's going to be, we need to accommodate for time to send this out to bid, identify the contractors, and move forward.
Very good. Fair enough. Councilmember Halsh, any questions?
Yeah, so kind of echoing Mrs. Peters' point in regards to we do all this work and then ultimately the decision is made. And I guess I want to talk specifically about the ballot proposal. I recall that everyone here felt like it is something when we talk about the damage removal that should go into a vote. So I guess my concern is Mayor mentioned that if we postpone 90 days, either way, 60 days or 90 days, we're kind of pushing up on that date when there would need to be an initiative by August. Does this work or us postponing this work in any way put that at risk or impede this continuing to the ballot in November?
Here's the problem. Regardless of whether we choose to rehabilitate the dam or remove the dam, unfortunately, the timeline, we're going to have to do something with these stop logs before that can occur. Because ideally, we could do all this work together as one single project, whether it be removal or rehabilitation. But the problem is if these stop logs fail catastrophically, it will drain the pond, and we're not going to be ready to make the decision to rehab or to remove. So something has to be done with these regardless. It's just a matter of let's try and be the most cost effective. What we brought you is probably the ideal situation. The cofferdam, you have a dry environment, you can make the improvements, but obviously the cost is driving us to consider other options. But we're going to have to do something, ideally in my mind, this construction season, independent of the decision to remove or rehabilitate.
And the proposal that's in front of you is also the safe. There is a difference on where the stop log is being installed, whether it's upstream or downstream of the current failed stop logs. So as City Manager Swallow explains, the cofferdam proposal that I do recommend being tabled tonight, but that includes creating a dry environment, a safe environment for the contractor to install the secondary stop logs. We're looking into if there's a way to safely get behind the failed stop logs and put a second set in. And I do think it's a good clarification that city staff did not go down there. I do not think city staff should take on that liability.
Anything else, Councilmember Halsh?
Yeah, so I guess just wanted to keep us abreast. I don't know if it's been decided if it will be a council-led initiative for the ballot or if it's going to be a citizen-led. I just know it's something that was important to the community, so I want to make sure that it isn't kind of lost through the cracks.
Fair enough. Councilmember Dillon, did you still have a question, or was it addressed by one of our colleagues?
I do still have a question. There's still words being thrown about catastrophic failure, drain the pond, excessive liability. These are things that are making me extremely nervous. So I do feel as though, because those words are out there, time is of the essence. That we do need to, I would not support 90 days. And then we did talk about, as Mr. Hall should mention, about a ballot initiative and sort of understand where we are timing-wise with this. And, I mean, we're just sort of taking things right now. I appreciate that we've been able to push the pause button, because $500,000 on this project, and whether this is the way we need to go or not, I don't know whether we've had others that have looked at it beyond Fisher to get other types of bids either. So I do think there's definitely some work to do, but I feel like it needs to rise to the level of the top of the list of priorities for us to make sure that we have clear, concise, definitive information on which to base a decision. It makes me very nervous that tonight we were going to spend this money had we not all of a sudden gotten some new information. So I just want to understand and make sure that we are looking at this holistically as to what we need to do. And if we need to spend the money to safely secure this, then that's what we need to do. We have some other information now that we need to absorb and kind of understand about. So I think that this body needs to have some additional conversations And I would even say that in 30 days, we come back and we see where we're at and then decide if we need to go out another 30 days.
There are no additional questions. Thank you, Engineer Humphries. Thank you, City Manager Swallow. There's a motion on the floor by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon, simply to acknowledge receipt of the memo. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. I'll make a motion to postpone consideration of unfinished business item 2654 and 2655 to a date certain of June the 15th, 2026.
Second.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion? Councilmember Gilba?
For me, I concur with our individuals. We should figure out how to do this cheapest fix, if we can do it, as soon as possible. Because even regarding the other legal opinions and stuff, those can be reviewed. This does not prevent you from proceeding with this work, does it? How do you want to see this?
Basically, we've directed Spicer to engage either Fisher and or other contractors, preferably additional contractors, to evaluate not only this proposal and if there are any cost savings, but we did try to value engineer this down to the lowest we could, and or some other alternatives like was discussed by Engineer Humphries. There is a potential to, well, it's not ideal, we could install another stop log, basically secondary stop logs behind the current ones.
Will it take 60 days to do that, or can that be done if we get the information, everything within 30 days?
Hard to say. I think hopefully within 30 days, but we know we'll be ready within 60. And obviously, in my opinion, if it's an urgent item, we can still bring it back.
If I may, there's nothing that would prevent, if
something on the first.
Yes, if the motion is adopted to postpone for 60 days, that means that staff is required, obligated to report out no later than that 60-day period. If you have information or you think it's imperative for us to take action before that 60 days, there's nothing that negates you from adding it as an action item on the agenda.
And the reverse of that is we could postpone it just for a month and then postpone it again in that period if we don't have the information. I'm just trying to give you an incentive to get this done as soon as possible, through our council direction. So,
What about the rain? What about the rain for the spring? Heavier rains, could that escalate this?
We are seeing some additional water through the existing stop logs, but it's the steel plates that are in place have held up well, and so we're not feeling like there's an immediate failure mode where we have to take immediate
and
action.
you have raised the floodgates to allow more water to go through, correct?
Any additional discussion on the motion? I have a motion on the floor moved by Morrow, seconded by Del Orco, to postpone to a date certain of June 15th, 2026. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it. The motion carries 5-1. We move on to new business, and we have two items that were removed from consent. The first up is 26-71, special event Jazz at the Mansion.
We're out of order here, so there's a 48. I don't know whether if you wanted to follow.
No, I'm going to go with, generally speaking, the numbers should correlate, meaning that the consent agenda items should be taken up first if they're moved, or if they're removed and added to new business. So we're going to take consent agenda items first. It's 26-71, special event Jazz at the Mansion, specifically the Davenport Curtis property. This will be a motion to approve the special event application, Jazz at the Mansion, as submitted, and to waive fees associated with the event.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Dillon, simply to acknowledge. Is there a second? Seconded by Gearbaugh. Councilmember Dillon, please proceed with your questions.
Thank you. We knew this was coming, and just sort of looking at it, I just want to clarify a couple of things. And it's more specifically regarding the map and the layout of kind of understanding. Are people going to have access to the house? Will it be roped off so that people cannot enter any part of it, like the front porches or anything like that?
Yes.
The doors will be locked and they will not have direct access to the house.
Okay. And then when we look at tents, just understanding, first of all, one of the tents looks like it's being put in the area that floods, that low-lying area, which would be the northwest corner of the property. But just understanding that tents will be put into grassy areas, there is no damage to the property at all, correct?
Obviously, there'll be tent stakes, but.
Right, but they're not going into asphalt or anything like that, the driveways.
And if I may, on that, the issue of the northwest corner, and perhaps Mr. Gearbaugh and Councilmember Delorco's memories are the same as mine, but our understanding from Mr. Roberts, the family member who serves on our committee, indicated that that area generally floods during peak rainy season, so April, May, generally would not be flooded at the tail end of July when this event is scheduled.
Actually, John Richards indicated that floods during the spring, and I've seen it flood in the spring. During the summertime, it's not, unless we have a major 4 or 5 inch rainstorm. So it is what it is. I don't think it'll be a concern.
That's fine. And then same with, it says the vendors along the driveway and on the grass, just understanding that there won't be damage to the property as far as stakes going into the driveways and things like that.
So we'll monitor the vendors for that. I mean, typically, they would only have very small tents that are not required to be staked down. There are also weights they can use in lieu of stakes.
I'd also add, and I'm not sure if Councilmember Gearbaugh or Councilmember Delorco saw the agenda for Wednesday's meeting, but ensuring that we have proper supervision and volunteers from the committee present at the Jazz in the Park event to prevent any damage to the land or the home is a discussion item at our upcoming committee meeting.
I appreciate that. And then it looks like, you know, just from this, like I said, I'm looking at just the way the map is done, and so I'm just hoping that this is just a conceptual thing. They've got Kids Corner, of all places, it's right in the front along Michigan Avenue. It seems like that would be a safer place, more on like the Henry Street side, if you're gonna have kids not right up against Michigan Avenue. So those are things to be concerned with. The other thing I wanted to ask is that, does the city of Saline allow food trucks on the streets? Do we need to do some sort of permission for this?
That street is going to be closed, and they are allowed in that district.
Okay. And I think that was already, and then as far as power sources, water sources, all of that.
So we're actually working with DT Energy right now to provide some supplemental power to the site. If that does not work, we have a plan B that outlet, 50 amp outlet could be added to the outside of the building. We've scoped that out. So the disadvantage of, connecting to the outside of the building would be running cords for a longer distance. So right now, though, DTE has offered to pay for installation of new electrical service on the site.
Okay. And do we have any estimate as to the number of attendees, since there's only 6 porta-johns?
It's 400 to 600.
Which I believe would be an increase from last year, but maintaining the trajectory of the event, which is they seem to add additional attendees every calendar year.
Just sort of understanding whether that falls, the number of porta-johns, and whether there needs to be more taken into consideration for that event.
We'll bring that up with the event sponsors.
Yeah, I just want to.
Delorco?
On that one point, I think this particular event is likely to be better attended than years past because of where it is.
Yes, definitely. Mr. Gearbaugh?
And the only thing I didn't notice on here was any need for additional policing for the 4 hours. DPW is on here, but I didn't know, being a larger, more present there, that we might need to have an officer.
Obviously, this has been reviewed by the police department. It was distributed to them. I believe they understood that they could probably cover it with existing staffing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, just one.
And I think that's in keeping with years past, where they had an officer drive down every once in a while and maybe walk the perimeter. But there were never any issues in previous years, and I highly doubt there will be any in 2026. Any additional questions? Councilmember WRRMA.
Just a comment. We reviewed this at our Environmental Commission meeting this last week, and really appreciate the consideration to the guidelines, the vendor guidelines for the environmental sustainability. We also would like to provide or offer help with signage for the recycling and waste receptacles. So.
Very good. Councilmember Halsch, before we vote on the motion to acknowledge receipt.
Yeah, actually, wanted to address a couple of Councilor Dillon's points. I'm actually on the Jazz at the Mention subcommittee in arts and culture. So the Kids Corner, that was an intentional choice just because the other option was going to be where a lot of the stage and a lot of the musicians are unloading and uploading. And we also were thinking about along Henry Street, the portion that's blocked off as being ADA accessible, so we didn't want to have kids running around with also people who need like that area. As far as the vendor walk is going to go from the the asphalt opening on Michigan Avenue up to the mansion. And all of the tents will be, I think, the 10 by 20 or the smaller tents. And the rules, I think, that have been sent out to vendors is that they're going to be offset off of the asphalt. So the only thing that I know that will have any contact potentially with the asphalt is for the stage. So just wanted to.
Thank you very much for that.
Yep.
And as far as vendors, it was clarified to them that no political candidates?
Yes. As far as I know, I'm there. Having seen the vendors list, I don't think that we have any political organizations within the vendor list. We are planning to include some of our community organizations, so Saline Social Services, the library, like those sort of things. And that's kind of the area in front of the mansion adjacent to the kids zone. And then as far as any of access to the house, there is a plan to include potentially a banner. I don't know if that banner will be around the house, but there is, we are looking at including some signage as well in relation to the event as far as access to the mansion.
Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor moved by Dillon, seconded by Gearbaugh to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve the event or not to approve the special event application as submitted?
Move to approve?
Was that, I'll let Harmont be the mover. Was that to approve, Councilmember Harmont? Yes. Okay, and moved and seconded by Dillon. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? We'll proceed to vote them. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries 6-0. Moving on to the final item that was removed from the consent portion of our agenda, 26-76, special event SUMC Fun Run. This will be a motion to approve the fun run requested by the First United Methodist Church of Saline.
Move to acknowledge?
Moved by Dillon to acknowledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gearbaugh. Please proceed with your questions.
Thank you. I just wanted clarification because this is a completely, I believe, this fun run is on sidewalk, so we're not closing any streets. Just understanding, there was talk of cones and just trying to understand, are there any areas on which they are limiting access, like Tebow Lane and things like that? Or is it just trying to understand that aspect of it?
I think there's, obviously they'll have to cross streets at certain locations,
Mm-hmm.
but everything else is on the sidewalks.
Yes, and the event organizer is here.
Okay.
Absolutely. Please come to the podium. Make sure the green light is illuminated at the base. We appreciate your presence tonight.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Minette, and I'm here on behalf of the First United Methodist Church of Saline. And I actually didn't really realize that this was on the agenda, and Terry did inform me a week ago. The event is for to increase awareness for childhood hunger, and we wanted to invite the community to be part of it. And it is all the money is going to go towards what's called the Kids Coalition Against Hunger. We purposely are staying on sidewalks so we don't have to close streets. As far as Tybalt, we're going to have like marshals on either side. I've talked with DPW and they have given me the green light. I don't know if they have communicated that to you or not. We were not planning on closing any streets. We're going to start from Woodland Meadows, basically run down Woodland, and then run down Maple, go through Brecken Park, and then come back. The only really street is Tybalt, both by Weber Blouse and with the light. We don't foresee that much traffic on a Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the runners will know that they have to stop at the light, or they'll run around the cars, however the runner does. We don't anticipate more than 100 runners, and as far as the time, it'd be less than probably, not that many people are going to be running across the street at the same time. So I don't think it should be a issue in terms of blocking any traffic.
This event is very similar to the crop walk in years past, correct?
No.
No?
Completely
Okay.
different.
Okay.
Completely different. This is a new event. And
It's similar though in the sense that you're using public sidewalks though.
yes,
Yeah,
we
okay.
are using public sidewalks, yes. And this is kind of like the first year for it, and I mean, if it gets bigger, maybe we'll expand onto something else. But the whole idea is to engage the community for childhood hunger awareness and to help support that.
Good. Please
Thank you
continue.
very much. I really appreciate that. And, you know, having spent many of Saturdays packing dry goods for the Kids Coalition, I appreciate the cause. I appreciate your efforts to raise money for that worthy group. I just wanted clarification, like I said, because it had cones, and just understanding that Tebow Lane, because of the new sports complex for the school, that property might be being used.
I know. We had this discussion with Brian Puffer and then also with DPW because they don't actually know when all that's going to be done. And as far as access, because we're not closing off T-Bot Lane from the west entrance, they can still come in that way. We're just going to cross it over by the Weber Blast. And then as far as the library goes, there's an exit that they can go out through the western entrance also, if that becomes an issue, but I don't think it'll be an issue.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for the clarification.
Additional questions from the dais? Thank you for being here, by the way. We do appreciate it. All right, there's a motion on the floor to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve? Moved by Gearbaugh to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. Is there any additional discussion? Appears to be none. Good luck with your event, by the way. We hope the weather is, hope the weather cooperates. It's been properly moved and seconded to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to regular new business items, 26-73, City Hall roof restoration bid. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt and to approve or not to approve awarding the contract of restoration of City Hall roof to C&I Building Maintenance Incorporated in accordance with the attached municipal building roof restoration invitation to bid for a base bid amount of $348,110 and authorize an additional $36,784 for lighting protection system work and verification, and to authorize 10% contingency of $34,811 to be utilized at the discretion of the Department of Public Services Director for a total authorized amount of $419,705.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Dillon, simply to acknowledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Delorco. In the absence of our DPS director, City Manager Swallow, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Obviously, for some time, we've known that there are some concerns with the City Hall roof due to appearance of some leaks and some visual inspections. So with that, the city engaged roofing advisor Tremco to complete full diagnostic of the roof. They actually did perform scans, infrared scans, to take a look at the condition of the insulation underneath. There are a few spots that will need to be cut out and repaired, as well as they did confirm that yes, that either replacement and or restoration of the roof would be needed. There is a product, liquid applied product that they can put on membrane roofs like ours that is also includes a reinforcing mesh, a polyester mesh that is much less expensive than actually tearing off and re-roofing completely. So that was the recommendation, to go with the AlphaGuard Bio restoration of the roof, that be applied, and it does come with a 20-year warranty. So it is, well, a new roof you may get up to 30 years. It's still a very good repair, and it's about half the cost of what a new roof would be. So with that, based on this information, we're to Tremco to put out a bid for contractors to complete this work. So we did receive bids back from a number of contractors. The low bid, as mentioned, was C&I Contracting. One of the things that was discovered during the pre-bid walk, however, was that the municipal building has lightning rods on the roof that would have to be probably taken off during the installation and then reattached and then tested and certified in order to make sure that they continue to work properly. So with that, we did, after receiving the bids and interviewing the low bidder, CNI, we did discover that they did not include that in their contract. It is a little bit, we looked at the addendum that was put out for the contract. It does indicate that they would be removed and reinstalled. It does say by a qualified contractor later. So there's a little bit of discrepancy whether the bidders were to include that in their base bid or not. In this case, CNI did not, so we're recommending adding that cost, which would be $36,784. Also, just because of if they cut out the installation things, there are a few potentials for some additional work for installation, restoration, things of that nature. So we're also recommending that contingency amount to be included, 10% contingency for $34,811. But again, total cost $419,705. Based on my communications with Tremco, they have worked with CNI Building Maintenance in the past. They do a number of large commercial contracts, as mentioned in my write-up. They've done the Grand Rapids Art Museum, Corwell Health Building, as well as some other significant institutional buildings. So we do believe they are fully qualified. And with Tremco's concurrence, we're recommending approving the contract to CNI Building Maintenance Incorporated.
That was very thorough. Thank you, City Manager Swallow. Are there questions for the City Manager regarding this motion? Councilmember Dillon?
Thank you. So the City Manager and I had a couple of conversations about this prior to the meeting, and I just want to clarify. So this does not include, we have pieces, right above us, there's a piece of the sidewall that is missing. This does not include that. There were inspections done of the drains, the actual drains, and I thought there were issues with those drains with clogs and issues that were causing some of the leaking. Have all of those, I mean, it seems like we've had 10 different inspections of this roof done and looking at different things that were happening. I guess I want to make sure that was all of that information compiled so that after we put a roof on, we say, oh, you know what? It was that downspout, by the way, that was causing this because there's some thing inside of it.
So, yeah, as far as the drains, that was inspected, and will basically how they apply this, and they'll make sure the drain is clear, and how they apply the product around the drain. There's actually drawings within the bid specifications for how they do that. You had mentioned where there's an exposed piece of plywood.
Correct.
I believe there used to be some siding material or something. That is not included. It's not part of the roof itself. That is more of a siding thing, but we can take care of that separately, but it's not part of the roof structure itself.
Okay, because that was a point in which it was leaking. It was my understanding. That's what we were told, that was part of where there was a leak.
There will be, they're bringing up the sides of each of the appurtenances around the equipment, things like that. There's some specifications for how they apply this product up the side of those particular areas. But I just want to clear, it won't cover that entire plywood area.
Okay.
Can I stop you right there? Regardless of whether it's causing a leak or not, it looks like hell, especially when you're at the stop sign eastbound on McKay. And to Councilmember Dillon's point, it's been without siding for several years now. So if we can expedite getting that repaired, I think that would be great. Sorry to interrupt.
And when we talk about what about is part of your contingency for the internal damage. We have multiple ceiling tiles that need to be replaced. This wall back here has bubbling from it. There's a lot of other aspects of things. So just understanding where those repairs are coming in and whether there's any mold remediation that needs to be done as a result of leaks.
The scan did identify any areas where there had to be any insulation, that was saturated or, due to leaks. And so that is part of the roof itself. That will all be repaired, but the interior is not included in this quote. Certainly, that's something that we can work on, whether we can do that internally. But for as far as roof tiles and things like that, that's not part of the roof structure itself, or ceiling tiles.
Okay, and can you remind me how much did we receive from the insurance company? We didn't have an insurance claim for the roof. What was the dollar amount that we actually had budgeted for the roof?
So we had, I believe, like $700,000 budget in case it had to be replaced.
Okay, so we are significantly under
Correct.
that budget number. Okay.
Additional questions, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just who's going to be the owner rep in charge of this, since we don't have a facility manager yet?
Right.
Who's going to be doing that?
So Trimco will be on site during installation, since part of they're serving as our roofing advisor. We'll also have our building inspection team looking at it as well. But they're not, they're on this liquid product, they're not necessarily experts, so that's why Trimco will be on site also during installation.
That's good to hear. We've had some bad luck with roofs, so making sure that we have a good owner rep representing us and double checking the work is much appreciated. The only other issue with this is the bid process. I know we're working on how to improve our bidding and everything else, so going forward, I'm hoping that we can make sure in clarifications. I know this extra going back seems to be questionable, but I guess we're adding on this additional piece for the lightning protection system. It's just, I get a little nervous when we have bids that don't necessarily comply with the full requirements of it, and we don't want to necessarily have to rebid and put a delay on this, so as long as we have clarification.
Complied with the original specifications. It was part of the addendum when they discovered where the lightning rods were, that it caused this change, and if we look at that addendum language, could have been very clear that, specifically make sure you include this in your bid, that is something that we have reasonable condition to waive that.
Thank you.
And Mr. Swallow, City Manager Swallow, before we vote, this is a question for the public's edification or benefit. Assuming the motion passes this evening, when will work convene, and what kind of inconveniences to our customers or residents would you expect during the duration of the work?
Well, that is the other advantage a little bit to this particular product. Without the tear off, you don't have all that waste material.
Right.
And so there will be ladders, around the facility. They're going to have to power wash it before application. So there'll be obviously water, spraying around the building, things of that nature. So there may be intermittent interruptions, but we can continue to occupy the building during the installation.
Okay. And time frame?
As soon as possible. They're actually trying to squeeze us in, but they have a larger, like schools, for example, are a big customer of theirs. And so they usually do that during summer break, when the schools are closed and things of that nature. So we're trying to get this approved as soon as possible.
Very good. Okay, we'll proceed to vote then on a motion simply to acknowledge receipt, which was moved by Dillon, seconded by Del Orco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve?
Move to approve.
Moved by Gearbaugh to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Del Orco. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? Appears to be none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries 6-0. Next two items are sort of perfunctory things. First up is 2648, Fire Special Assessment Resolution Number 2, simply setting the public hearing. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Treasurer Finch and to adopt or not to adopt Resolution Number 2648, 2, setting a public hearing for May the 18th, 2026 for the purpose of a special assessment levy in the amount of $647,746, which does not exceed $1 million.
Move to acknowledge and adopt.
Moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge and adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. Any brief comments you'd like to make, Mr. Swallow? Again, this has become standard practice for us for the last few years, so it does not deviate from what we've done in both 2024 and 2025.
Correct. There'll be a third and final resolution to assess the special assessment levy at the May 18th meeting, subject to any comments that would be brought forward at the public hearing.
Yep. Mr. Gearbaugh, any comment you'd like to make as our permanent representative of the Fire Board?
Nope, we knew this was coming, and this is the way we fund it.
Very good. Any additional questions or comments from the dais? Any discussion on the motion? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon to acknowledge and to adopt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say not, nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 26-74, recommended budget for fiscal year 27, July 1, 26 through June 30th, 27, and resolution again setting a public hearing date. This will be a motion to acknowledge and place on file the recommended fiscal year 27 budget from City Manager Swallow, and to approve or not to approve the resolution to set the public hearing date for proposed fiscal year 27 budget on Monday, May the 18th at 7 p.m. with public notice to be given in accordance to the law.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
How about to acknowledge, to place on file, and to approve?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, very good, and that was seconded by Harmount. Again, simply a perfunctory thing, Mr. Swallow. We did have an in-depth discussion on the proposed budget earlier this evening. That meeting was recorded, and we welcome you to take a look online and address any questions you may have to council members or staff. Anything you'd care to say about this particular motion?
As of April 24th, we'll have the public notice out there, and then we'll have the, obviously, the budget itself. If people want to look it up, we'll place it on the website and have hard copies available at City Hall.
Very good. Any questions or comments from the dais? Any discussion on the motion? It's been moved by Gearboss, seconded by Harmont, to acknowledge, to place on file, and to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business item 2675, WRRMA resolution for second amended articles of incorporation. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt and to approve or not to approve the second amended articles of incorporation for the Washtenaw Regional Resource Management Authority in the form of the attached resolution.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Dillon, simply to acknowledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gearbaugh. In the absence of our DPS director, Mr. Swallow, would you care to make some comments?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And just to note, Assistant Superintendent Marion is in the office.
Oh, sorry.
Or, excuse me, in the audience.
The Deputy Director is here. Sorry, Mr. Marion, I acknowledged you earlier, but failed to remember you were still
He is our
present.
representative to WRRMA, which is why I asked him to be here tonight in case there are questions about what the board is currently, or what the organization is currently working on. But as Council is aware, for some time, the city has been a member of the Washtenaw Regional Resource Management Authority. And basically, they do a lot of coordination around solid waste management across Washtenaw County. As you recall, a couple of years ago, there was an initiative to try and get a joint bid of several municipalities to handle waste hauling services and recycling. Those services would be then, the goal in that case was to reduce the overall cost, try and get by bidding out together, we'd get a better pricing on that. That effort did not move forward because I had a couple of municipalities that went ahead and renewed contracts before that was ready to go out to bid. So with that, they've now been focusing more on just other waste management issues across the county, including recycling is a significant focus of theirs right now, and how municipalities can improve recycling in particular in their community. So with that, this change is just a change in really how the organization functions in terms of annual meetings and regular meetings, going from more flexibility in when their annual meeting can be called, lessening the number of meetings required from monthly to quarterly, and then adjusting the timing of the budget to accommodate the quarterly meeting schedule. So really, this is more a functional item in terms of when they meet and when elections and other organizational things occur. With that, I know there's some questions that came up, do we still see value in being members of the organization? And I think the short answer is yes. There's a $5,000 annual contribution that we make in dues towards that. I'll give the example, when we updated the waste management contract, we did borrow several best management practices that they had developed as part of the goal to bid out that larger contract. We still do work with them on how we're doing for recycling here in the city and how we might improve. So I think there's some value. Certainly, Mr. Marion may be able to provide a little more detail as he is our designated representative.
Mr. Marion, we appreciate your attendance and patience this evening. Is there anything you'd like to add to the record before we open up for questions?
Just that I find great value in this, being part of this for the last, for the last year. Zach Hoplow took over when he was part of the organization, and then I took it back over in his absence. I think working with the 8 communities that are part of it there's a great value. Trying to line up all the contracts so that hopefully we can regionalize something and again save cost overall is the overall goal of WRRMA and its initiative. There's also a lot of work being done to talk about recycling and get the different MRFs in order. I know that our vendor is Waste Management, and I highly approve of them. They're using the latest and greatest state-of-the-art brand new facility down in Detroit, who is, accepts, in theory, some more materials. There's also some legislation coming down from upstate talking about food waste. So this group talks about that a lot and in what direction we need to go or start thinking about as that becomes a bigger issue with landfills not wanting to take on food waste.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Marion. Are there questions for either the city manager or our deputy DPW director? Looks like Councilmember Dillon, and then I'll jump to Mr. Delarico, and then Councilmember Harmount.
Thank you. Mr. Marion, thank you for being here. Since you're actually attend the meetings, hopefully you've got some insight. So between the 8 communities, it's about 40 grand a year that's paid into WRRMA. What are they spending the funds on?
So it's on education. There's WRRMA. If you ever get a chance, go to the WRRMA site. There's it's a trash wizard. I can't remember the exact name of it. Waste Wizard is what it's called. So if anyone has any questions about whether you can or can't do certain kinds of styrofoam or certain plastic cups or anything like that, you can punch that in and it'll tell you where that's recommended to go. And that's facilitated through WRRMA. So education for the public in general. They also, it's a county initiative, so they put in their 5,000 but they run the program.
Okay. And where are you in current conversations? Like, where do they feel as though like they're going to finally get the traction to be a consortium?
So our contract and Ypsilanti's contract, City of Ypsilanti's contract, have lined up. We're I think and did a 5-year. So we're going to take the next 5 years and see what legislation comes through, try to get everyone else who has expiring contracts, Ann Arbor Township, Dexter, Pittsfield, Ypsilanti Township. I feel like I'm missing a couple. Try to get everyone in line so the contracts line up so that they can extend theirs to match what we have done and what Ypsilanti has done. That's the goal, along with education and.
Okay, so then at this point, then we're looking at 5 more years of buy-in with education just being the outcome from it.
Education and learning and they work with the people upstate in legislation to understand what's coming down with the food waste. That's going to be a big deal. Food won't go in the trash anymore, it'll be composted, and working with compost and finding solutions for that as well.
Okay, I appreciate that food waste, because I know right now, beyond garbage, food waste and compost, leaves, that sort of natural compost are the 2 big factors right now of space and especially food compost. So I appreciate that there's conversations about that, and hopefully we can bring them into the city and get a little bit more education, because I know I am still what I refer to as an optimistic recycler. I'm sure I put things into my recycle bin that probably shouldn't go.
I was going to add sort of to
yes.
in terms of the if you look at the articles of incorporation too, there's a provision if members need to withdraw because they no longer see value. There's a 60-day provision that they can withdraw from the organization too. So if it isn't necessarily 5 years. If we did not feel that we're getting value out of this, we do have a 60-day out, if you will.
Right. And I mean, I think that's the part that I'm most disappointed with, was that we all bought into this, and then we keep having that 60-day clause is the problem, is that we have people, it's time like, okay, let's, we're ready, set, and then we have communities that step away, and we kind of lose that buying power aspect of it. So, I mean, I think everybody either has to be in the pool or it needs to fold and go away.
Thank you. Councilmember Delarico and then Councilmember Harmount.
Most of my questions were answered. I just basically wanted to understand is the notion of regionalizing trash pickup with WRRMA dead in the water, or is there going to be another bite at the apple down the road?
Oh, there'll be definitely another bite at the apple. It's getting the contracts lined up so that everyone expires at the same time, which makes it convenient for everyone to jump on one contract with whomever. And that's where the trepidation is for some communities. I think we're pretty comfortable with waste management here, so there could be some trepidation if someone else were to win that bid. But I mean, again, if it saves.
So you're in the business of herding cats.
It's in the interest of saving money is what it is, and it sounds like it's a significant amount of money over the duration of the contract.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so Thank you so much for stepping into this role. I know that there's been a lot of efforts started with WRRMA probably back in 2020 or maybe a little bit before that. Do we know if they've actually improved the quality of recycling since we started? Because I've been to several different MRFs. I'm like really in the know on the recycling, and it's just a garbage and literally not super efficient process in general. So
it sounds like the new state-of-the-art facility in Detroit that Waste Management has built and we're now delivering to for our recycling. Sounds like it's amazing. I haven't been there. I'm sure that we could organize something. I could organize something for any of you to join with Theo or even with Chantel. And I don't want to throw her under the bus. She's not here to speak for herself, but I'm sure we could organize something with Waste Management for a tour of that facility. I think that'd be fantastic.
Great, and I'm very optimistic and hopeful for the curbside composting since 33% of landfills is right now is food waste, so diverting that would be significant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gearbaugh.
Just real quick, Ryan, when you mentioned the website, I just happened to look at it. Looks like they haven't really updated it since February 2025, and they don't have anything regarding 25 summary of activities. So you might at your next meeting suggest they do a review.
Look at that again. I thought I looked at it today, and I thought that there was 2026 information up there. But
yeah, it just says 25. Yeah, it says the last one's February 2025, and they usually have something every few months, but it's been a year and a half, so, or a year, 3 months. Thank you.
Any additional questions from the dais? Mr. Marion, thank you. City Manager Swallow, thank you as well. We have a motion on the floor moved by Dillon, seconded by Gearbaugh, simply to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve?
To approve.
Moved by Gearbaugh to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Delorco. Thank you. Any additional discussion? All those in favor of approving say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. The last formal action item of the evening is 26-77, Saline Area Fire Authority Articles of Incorporation. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt and to adopt or not to adopt the Articles of Incorporation for the purpose of creating the Saline Area Fire Authority under the provision of the Emergency Services to Municipalities Act of 1988, PA 57, as amended, and to authorize the clerk, or actually to authorize the mayor and clerk to endorse the articles.
Motion to acknowledge and to adopt.
Motion by Harmont to acknowledge and to adopt. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Gearbaugh. City Manager Swallow, would you like to begin? We also have Mr. Swainson, who is the representative from Lodi Township and chair of the Fire Board. And then, of course, we can hear comments from Mr. Gearbaugh, who's our permanent rep to the Saline Area Fire Board, and Mr. Delorco, who is the alternate.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is sort of a culmination of a lot of work, and first of all, the city and its partners considering an authority to handle our fire services. Obviously, back in October of 25, at our meeting, we reviewed that, and basically, council passed a resolution of intent to work with partners in developing the fire authority and working towards the adoption of the Articles of Incorporation. The Fire Board, particularly the steering committee, who obviously Ms. Champion has been very directly involved in as our representative, have worked in numerous hours to develop the Articles of Incorporation. They talked about the powers of the authority, the number of terms and the board members, how they would be selected, whether or not to include an at-large board member, what constitutes a quorum, the number of officers, oversight of the fire chief, budget adoption process and time frame, funding the authority with a dedicated millage or without, what's the scenario that may occur without, and the need for some additional details to be adopted as bylaws for the organization, and then the things like if we would expand or contract, how would we add a member or delete a member. So I think in general, everybody is very satisfied with the Articles of Incorporation where they stand. The board approved that they be distributed out for the communities for adoption. There was some changes in terms of how the annual budget was adopted based on actions by Lodi Township and Saline Township. Basically, the way the articles were drafted was that the board would essentially adopt the budget, and that's where most of the negotiation would occur, and that would go out to the municipalities for a final approval. Lodi and Saline have requested that we move more direction where there's just a draft budget or preliminary budget that is sent out for the municipalities to consider and approve, and then if they're successful, then it's brought back to the board for final adoption. So that's a little bit of a change in how it would function. One of the concerns with that particular model, and this is really just for, let me clarify a little bit. This is really just if there's not a millage approved, what would be the scenario for budget adoption. So one of the concerns was we don't want to delay in getting the budget adopted, as it may go back and forth between the board and the additional municipalities. So that was one change. However, I think overall, I mean, all the core functions are the same. The articles are the same, other than this provision that were approved by the fire board for distribution. So at this time, I would recommend going ahead with adoption of the Articles of Incorporation and certainly take any questions that you may have.
Mr. Gearbaugh, anything you'd like to add as our rep to the fire board?
Yeah, well, and speaking with Lori Champion, and thankfully Craig's here tonight too, we recognize each independent or area or municipality having authority to make these changes and so forth. Where the concern came up was the process of how this was brought forward. Lodi made the change. We would have preferred if that change would have come to the board, the executive board itself, the fire board, to be reviewed and discussed and determined. Unfortunately, it was directly taken immediately to the Saline Township and made as an approach to avoid. That's an issue that the executive board will have to deal with, and how that process occurred through the fire chief and what other representatives. The concern with this one, again, it only will be triggered if there isn't a millage, and it goes back to where we're basically the same approach we had in the past. I mean, the ideal will be is that one municipality or township has the authority to basically kill the budget and forcing it to go back based on what I'm seeing with this moves forward like this. My concern in talking with Lori is that could that jeopardize the bonding and the financial aspects of what's happening with the new authority? That if something happens, is there a risk there related to that, being that some outside entity has the ability to kill the budget when you're planning on doing debt servicing and all those kind of things? That could be a trigger that we should have probably talked about. At this point, we need to move forward on these articles and try and get something. I think this is kind of a compromise. We in the past have also discussed that issue of does one member of the committee in the current memo of understanding have the ability to stop a budget? In the past, it didn't. Lodi voted to not do it, and we still went forward with it. So this puts more weight upon it, and if it's in the articles, then it will allow that to happen. Should that happen, really what the intent is, and it was one of my concerns, was what happens when you're committing a community to a budget and there's not a millage there dedicated to support it. You're basically forcing that entity to then have somehow fund it. So this gives us some opportunity to reconsider and force back onto the authority to say, hey, we can't fund it in this short notice. You're going to have to make some changes and things. So there are some positives to it, and I can see where Lodi was pushing on that.
Mr. Delorco, as the alternate, do you have any comments you'd like to make at this time?
I want to say that hopefully we don't get into the situation where the millage doesn't pass and we're not forced to trigger this clause. I do think that the articles need to move forward, but I did want to voice some frustration over the way in which this was handled. This change was made post hoc, circumventing the fire board after the articles were approved, and that is against the spirit of how we're supposed to be working together as a team to get this thing done.
Thank you. Mr. Swanson, as the chair of the fire board, are there any comments you'd like to make this evening? We appreciate your attendance and patience. You don't have to make comments, but we would welcome them if you are so inclined.
I guess I would just say that, as you mentioned, I'm also the Lodi rep. And I think generally Lodi works well. We had a perfect storm here. Unfortunately, I was with grandkids for spring break in Arizona at our home there. And you all know our supervisor passed. And we just had a bunch of things. I don't think this is Lodi's reputation. I think Lodi will be a good partner in this. And unfortunately, things didn't work out well this time. But it it is important, I think, that we be able to put in front of the voters an opportunity to upgrade their fire service, because we have fallen behind, I think, as we look around other fire departments in the county. So that was all I wanted to add.
Well, we appreciate that very much. Mr. Gearbaugh, my question is primarily for the public's benefit. So just to be clear on some previous statements, the way the language is written now, one municipality can essentially veto the proposed budget.
Moving this forward, if we don't have a millage, if there's not a voted millage, and then say, 10 years from now, it expires, if we actually get a millage, then it goes back to each entity, and we basically revert back, and that one partner of this group could vote to say, no, we don't want the budget, and then it would be force it back. Then you'd be in this repeated role of agreeing to a budget at some point, kind of like we've done in the past.
I appreciate that clarification. I look at action items in their totality. I look at them holistically, and as I look at this proposal, I think the good far outweighs the bad. My one issue would be with that particular matter, and you're correct, as is Councilmember Delarico. Hopefully, it is a non-issue, and that there is a millage that is considered and adopted by the electorate in the ensuing months or years. I do think it is not a best practice to allow one municipality veto power over a proposed budget. I think if a majority votes, then that should carry the day, and that should be the budget that the group moves forward, even if there are certain individuals who object or have concerns. But that said, I articulated my concerns to my colleagues and to the public. I think the good here outweighs the bad, and when we get to a vote to both acknowledge and to adopt, I'll be voting in the affirmative. Councilmember Dillon, do you have some questions?
Thank you. Just some comments, having spent 10 years on the fire board. This is a long time coming. And I will just say that, I don't want to throw away the baby with the bathwater on this one. There were definitely some missteps, and it's my assumption and that the current fire board will address them, and making sure that policies and procedures carry forward in a correct manner moving forward. I do have some internal questions for us, just understanding. So there's a perfect storm and there is no millage. It comes back to the municipalities. At that point, first, will our fire special assessment, does that survive this creation of the fire authority?
Yes.
So we will always have that, and we can just put it back into hibernation?
Correct. I mean, we can obviously, that we have the process with the resolutions that we would have to follow to reassess the fire special assessment. But yes, we still have that power to, if the village should fail, to use that as our funding mechanism.
Okay, because the issue, and this was a bigger issue that I think unfortunately was just an issue for the city, is that the budget timeline, they run calendar year. They're a January 1 to December 31st, which doesn't necessarily match to the city's year. And so there could potentially be a need for funding outside of our budget planning time.
So it is set up really to accommodate the township budgets.
Correct.
I believe if you look at the articles, I believe it's December 1st, the deadline for the budget approval. So that does set them up for at the beginning of the calendar year.
Yes.
So we have a little bit more time in that regard, because our fiscal year doesn't start until July 1.
Right, but then if they were to come for money, it would be in the midst of our fiscal year.
There's some increases.
Correct.
We're anticipating, yes.
Right, so that's the part. So I just want to be very mindful of that, and it's something that I think, I'm very optimistic, knock on some wood, that any kind of millage would pass and it would be a non-issue. I think it's something, though, that the city will always need to have eyes on and be proactive in planning. So should we come to close to an end of a millage, that if there's a renewal or something, that the city is making a plan as to, should it not pass, what would that look like for funding on our part?
Thank you. Any additional questions from the dais? Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there any additional discussion or debate on the motion? I'm sorry, because we do have a motion on the floor to acknowledge receipt and to adopt. No? Okay. It's been properly moved by Harmount, seconded by Gearbaugh to acknowledge and to adopt the articles. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Mr. Swainson, Chairman Swainson, thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening. We proceed to the discussion portion of our agenda. First up is reports and other announcements, including updates from committees, commissions, task forces, and working groups. Again, I'm going to start to my left and end to my right. Councilmember Harmon, any reports?
I do. So we had our Environmental Commission meeting last Wednesday. This is Earth Month, and Wednesday is Earth Day. We kicked off Earth Month with a really great nature walk and plant identification. Thank you so much, Mr. Peters, Jim Peters, for your excellent historical presentation. We had a lot of folks that showed up. I think we had like 25 or so folks, and it was raining, and it was just really great. Allison Ostick did a great job with her presentation about plants. She's very knowledgeable. There is a lot of plant life in the Salt Springs Park, so highly recommend if you hadn't had a chance to get there. And on your way to the Salt Springs, you can also check out the DPW, the wastewater treatment plant progression. On Saturday, we have a Bracken Park cleanup in the morning, and then Code and Clay and Code is doing an event later in the evening. Tara Joshi used to be a member of the Environmental Commission. And then on the 28th, we have a collaboration with the library, and we will be filming Wild Robot. It is a family-friendly film. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Gearbaugh?
Since our last meeting, risk management met, just addressing that, trying to bring some more information into that to actually repurpose and getting some more input to bring to council, hopefully by next month, an update on all the concerns and things that we have. Asset management had met. All my colleagues were part of that. A lot of the focus was on the dam and also dealing with some of the concerns and issues related to basically water and sewer and how we will progress moving forward in terms of potential expansion or other options related to how we will provide those services to our community.
Very good. I just have two, and I sent an email to this effect earlier today. We had our monthly Saline Area Senior Center Executive Board meeting this morning at 9 a.m. We dealt with several substantive items, but we also received a tour of the updated and expanded Senior Center, which is nearing completion. In fact, it needs to be complete by a week from tomorrow. And all of you are invited on council and the community to the re-grand opening and ribbon cutting, which will be on Cinco de Mayo, 2 weeks from tomorrow. At 4 with a brief program and ribbon cutting around 4:15, and then tours of the expanded facility subsequent to that. It's absolutely gorgeous. I actually thought it looked pretty good before, but it's enlarged, and it is a substantially improved service for Saline area seniors. And then my last announcement is I was present along with council members Harmount, Delorco, and Hulsh yesterday afternoon for the formal installation of Pastor Kimberly Ashby at the Presbyterian Church in downtown Saline. It was a very nice event, and she's obviously been a wonderful resource and a supporter of a number of important community initiatives, and we wish her and her congregants the very best as she hopefully continues a long-term tenure with an important church in our community. I think it's important to note the positive impact that our faith communities have on the greater Saline area. And with that, I'll defer to Councilmember Dillon.
Thank you. The Cable Commission met, and we are still working through our future planning. I do think that City Manager Swallow and I will be sending out some information to council to solicit some feedback that we need for some better decision-making moving forward. Urban County we had their first engineering pre-meeting regarding the new sidewalk that would be put on Maple Road using our Urban County funds. The city manager, I was not a participant in that meeting, but he was able to participate. It's very preliminary. The county will be doing some environmental, and next steps will be that once the preliminary engineering, those costs will come back to this body for review, because there will most likely be a shortfall that the city will have to absorb with that. And Mr. Gearbaugh talked about asset management.
Very good. Councilmember Delorco?
I won't get into asset management. That's been covered. The Davenport Curtis House group met on April 8th. We spent the majority of the time being briefed on the strategic planning process from Diana Wong with her presentation, kind of coalescing around how we want to go about organizing public community engagement and communication. We also were able to establish 2 subcommittees. We defined a small finance subcommittee as well as the creation of a communication subcommittee. And there's already been some fruit of that labor. I don't know if anyone's seen the mansion minutes going around on social media, but they're trying to be very informative with what we're up to, engaging the community and leading up to, particularly leading up to Jazz in the Park. So got some great things accomplished there, and we're meeting again this week.
Very good. Councilmember Halsh, any reports, announcements, or updates from committees, commissions, or task forces?
Yeah, so we met last week, Arts and Culture Committee, to continue going over excuse me, some of the marketing and the logistics around Jazz at the Mansion. We also have decided to open up our the electrical box painting. We've decided to open that up to the community. So we're working on getting that messaging out to the community. There, we were awarded a CARES grant to repair the little libraries. I think 4 of the little libraries across the city. I know in another meeting, Councilmember Dillon had mentioned some communities are converting those into little pantries. So that was an idea that I brought up to Arts and Culture, and it is something that they're very much interested in and amenable to. We also appointed, with the resignation of Charlie Hurst, we appointed a new vice chair, Alex Johnson. And then as far as the rec center implementation team, we had our first meeting, I think a week before, and got together, and the first meeting was really focusing on sort of our scope, our mission, and looking at some of the capital improvement projects that were identified in prior task force and studies with that earmark. One of the things that I made sure to bring up kind of on behalf of council is that we're really looking at how we can bring measurability and setting benchmarks in as far as the work that we're doing, but also within the rec center, and also really making sure that it was stressed that as a body, we do want to consider and look at what a closure scenario would look like. So those are some of the things I know I've heard from you, my colleagues. So those were articulated and communicated to that implementation team. So we look forward to meeting tomorrow and working towards that June report.
Very good, thank you. And last item is a status on the Bixby Marionette Trust Agreement. As I previously articulated, I'd hoped this would be an action item at tonight's meeting. Unfortunately, it was not, but we continue to make good progress, and hopefully there'll be something to digest or act upon at our next meeting, the first Monday in May. Mr. Swallow, do you want to give a brief update?
Sure thing again, Mayor and Council. I think I shared with you the document that we're working from, the original trust agreement. There is a provision in that trust agreement that indicates that if the collection is no longer used for its intended purpose, that it may be returned to the heirs. And so that's something that we've brought up with the Bixby group and said, council cannot continue to maintain the collection in its entirety. There may be opportunities for a smaller subset of it to potentially be preserved or stored, at least here, and then circulated throughout the existing display areas. For example, the library, as well as Liberty School, as well as here at City Hall. But that it is the city's intent to move forward with either dissolving the trust or coming to some sort of agreement on how it could be amended, that the collection could be reduced, distributed out, if hopefully to other institutions that may be able to use the balance of the trust or the balance of the materials, or look at maybe we just need to start over with a newer agreement that clearly stipulates that it'd be a much smaller collection that the city would hold, or and that we cannot continue to maintain the current collection in its entirety.
Yeah, I think the key points are we are not in compliance with the agreement that was adopted in the late 1990s. We haven't been for many years. We're not going to be in a position to preserve and maintain the vast majority of that collection in perpetuity. We are aware that there are other entities in our region and throughout North America who potentially could and have shown some desire to acquire portions of the collection, and our long-term goal should be to disperse those to entities that can preserve them, promote them, and allow the public to view them. Okay. If there are no questions on that, we will proceed to the second public comment period. Oh, I'm sorry.
While we're still on discussion, just two other things I'd like to bring up because it was mentioned at our last meeting and then it was casually mentioned tonight. We need to set dates for a council retreat. We're making statements per council policy, things like that. We have council members that have never seen those documents that we're referring to, and whether those are, still documents that should be used, whether they need to be revisited, revived, whatever the case may be. But we had a council retreat several months ago, and we've not done the follow-up. So I really want that prioritized. I also would like to understand where we are with metric marketing. That survey was done several months ago now. Has the data been received? And I do see that the city is still continuing to pay them and understanding what we've gotten as deliverables.
I think we had a conversation about that maybe not last week but the week before, and I think I'd like to tentatively be slated for an update on the metric marketing communication plan for our first meeting in May. Okay. If there's nothing further, we are now at the second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment to City Council. This public comment period is limited to 3 minutes per person. Those wishing to speak are requested, but of course not required to state their name and address for the record. We generally do not engage in a back and forth during this public comment period. Are there any citizen comments this evening? Let me defer to the city clerk. Were there any written comments provided in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remark read at this time? Easy enough. Then if there's nothing further to be brought before City Council this evening, the chair would be delighted to entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:26. Oh boy. I'm going to do Gearbaugh as the mover and Dillon as the second. All those in favor of adjourning say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. See you in 2 weeks.